Welcome, race fans, to round 2 of the MSC GT3 Series Season 2 for the first time ever, coming to you live from TRTN. We were called in to bring you this event's coverage, and what a pleasure it is then to be part of another thrilling championship. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here from a sunny Emilia-Romagna here in Italy at the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Dino Ferrari, otherwise known by its more popular name, Imola. Founded in 1953, Imola originally hosted motorcycle races in its inaugural year of operation, only until the year after in 1954 would the first race be ran on four wheels. Since then, Imola has played a vital role in the developing history of Formula One, hosting championship rounds in 1963 and 1979, and then became part of the championship rota proper from 1980 onwards. It became a cornerstone of Grand Prix racing history for reasons both pleasant and sadly unpleasant, as it was the site of one of motorsport's darkest days, the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, where the world lost two drivers in the span of the same race weekend, Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. This tragic event ultimately shaped Imola into what it is today, with radical reforms to the redesign of the Variante, well, what is now the Variante Tamburello, and the entirety of Sector 1, so that the wounds of the past may never be reopened. In the modern day, Imola is consistent of 19 turns and 3 miles of FIA Grade 1, an agile and challenging course that brings its own unique flavour to the growing list of Italian venues used in championships that span the world over. In Imola, the European Le Mans Series, World Endurance Championships and Formula One World Championships of all ran in 2025, with F1 recently announcing the 2025 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix would be its last for now, as it loses its spot on 2026's calendar to the upcoming Madrid Grand Prix. You join us here in the closing 9 minutes of free practice here in round 2 of the championship, and to recount the results from round 1, taking a look back into Brands Hatch gave us quite a decisive opening victory in Season 2 for Russell Nash and the 999 McLaren, taking the overall and pro category wins, and also setting the fastest lap for good measure, a 1:25 dead in the 999. Lee Evans and Ian Oates make the podium in the number 44 and the number 6, and Hatton in 4th with the number 55. Now, this is one standout appearance here in the top 5 overall standings, and then taking home the AM category win, the number 97 Aston Martin of Connor Johnson, who finishes ahead of Josh Harris and Robert Ogan, Jonathan Barrett in 8th, and Alfredo Paria-Vigo in 9th position. Leroy Donald rounds out the top 10. Behind him, Jason Leatherby, Sean McNally and Henro Fori. DNFs then for Daniel Miller, David Horton, Hozel Rockets, Pascal and Jonathan Curran, Tom Van Lorca, Donnie Linton, Milan Picconi and Mirko Goat. Now, looking as to how that impacts the championship standings across both categories, first up is the pro standings, where Russell Nash leads with 27 points. That's 9 points ahead of Lee Evans. Ian Oates makes 3rd, Hatton in 4th, Harris 5th, Ogan in 6th. Then into the AM category, of course, Johnson leads after his maiden win in category in the 97 Aston Martin. That puts him ahead of Barrett and Paria-Vigo for the podium. Leroy Donald 4th, Jason Leatherby in the top 5, Sean McNally and Henro Fori just outside the top 5. Of course, the rest on that chart were the DNFs that sadly have failed to secure points in the opening round of the championship, therefore do not appear on the charts. Looking back into that then, 9 DNFs to kick off the season. It was quite a rough and ready start at Brands Hatch. Heading into Imola today, we're on board with Edward Vickery on his way down towards the Acqua Minerale. Oh, sorry, out of Acqua Minerale, I should say, down towards the Variante Alta, very infamous section of the track, and just for that reason, as spinning out there was Vickery. Get a look at that on the replays as well. Now, this is almost textbook. This is what the drivers are imminently fearing on their way down towards the Variante Alta. This is not an easy section of the track. Those incredibly high sausage curbs on either side are almost purpose-built with the intent to throw balance asunder. So for the 73, that's going to be a real weighing issue coming in to qualifying today, which we are not too far away from as we speak. Just about 6 minutes and a half left to go before that point. Looking around the track here, we can see Thomas Neymeyer and the number 95 on his way out of the Variante Tamburello and down towards the Variante Villeneuve, as we'll look on board with one of our drivers around this track here to get a comprehensive tour, hopefully by the end of free practice today. And whilst we look for said driver, I believe it is to be the number 76 at the moment, Pascal Curran, down in the AM category with Porsche. Let's get a look on board here with the Porsche on his way down through Ravazza as we get a comprehensive breakdown tour of this fantastic circuit, or so I'm led to believe, because down at Ravazza there turns 17 trouble for Pascal Curran in the 76. Hopefully brings that back onto the track for a start here in Imola. out of turn 19 there. Now, what would be the Variante Bassa in the former MotoGP Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. As you can see there off to the left-hand side. Instead, we launch around turn 1 then. Down towards the Variante Tamburello. You can see traffic ahead there. Jonathan Barrett and Tom Van Locke in front of Pascal Coeur, and he has to run wide there out through turn 2, 3, and 4. That's going to be a real weighing issue over the course of today's coming race and also that qualifying session. One of the main issues with Imola is just how close that pit exit is to such a high octane section of the track where it is total commitment required. So let's instead get on board with the next driver to the line. Up in the pro category, racing for Ford, then Thomas Neymeyer, or so I'm led to believe, because fooled again as he's into the pit lane. So let's see if we can catch on board here. It's trouble between Picconi and Vickery down at the Variante Alta. So it will be instead now getting on board with Vickery. So comes full circle here. We started with him, and now we get back on board with Edward Vickery on his way down towards Ravazza. Hopefully now, third time's the charm, touch wood, that there will be a tour, and oh my goodness gracious me, can someone get around this track? So on with the 29, and let's see if Milan Picconi has any tricks up his sleeve, or so I'm told, because this has not been the greatest start to a breakdown tour, in my honest opinion. Hopefully Picconi can then break the curse. So number 29 BMW is out through turn 19 and on towards turn 1. So now, hopefully, fourth time's the charm here in Imola. And it is a tough circuit on driver and machine alike. Down through the Variante Tamburello we go then. Of course, that was redesigned after the tragic events of the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix. Now to become this very tight chicane to kick things off. Otherwise would have been an incredibly fast, mind-blowingly fast, dare I say, left-hand curve. Down towards the Variante Villeneuve then. Turns 5 and 6. Runs in complement then to turns 2, 3, and 4. The start of Sector 1, bringing us down to another high-octane section of the track here. One of our major attacking spots after those two Variante sections down at Tosa Curve here. As this open hairpin left brings us uphill for the climb up towards turn 8 and 9 at Piratella. So on board with Picconi. Out through turn 9, then to the bank there at turn 10. Bringing us down into what I previously had mislabeled there. This is the Aqua Minerale. Turns 11, 12, and 13. This very, very sharp gradient, declining right-hand turn. Downhill, curved braking zone recipe for disaster there on the track. And it's complemented by this short run uphill to the Variante Alta. Now, we saw trouble before for Vickery. Do we see problems for Picconi? We saw it on the last lap there when I believe he got side by side with Vickery. Those two jostling for position on track before qualifying's even begun here. 3 minutes left to go in free practice. Now on his way out towards turns 16, 17, and 18 here. And what are technically the penultimate corner sections of the track, as we're not yet onto the final set of corners. We're here at Ravazza, out through turn 18. Then that slight kink to the right at turn 19, coming up just past the pit entry lines here. On his way to the line then. Hopefully we were able to finally get a tour out of someone today. And Milan Picconi being the man, the number 29 across the line. Sadly not to an improvement this time around. His best time of 1:45.468 puts him 9th fastest in today's free practice session. Just catch on board here with the 401 of Josh Harris. He's got Donnie Linton in front of him as they make their way down through the Variante Villeneuve. And we're going to see a fundamental difference in cornering characteristics out of these drivers. Oh, do keep it. Keep it below the belt here. Yeah, gents, this is getting a little bit out of hand already for the start of today's session. Now, these drivers have been in this session for upwards of 58 minutes, so it's been an hour free practice that we weren't scheduled to broadcast here. You join us right at the very end of free practice so that we can get formalities and introductions underway, so that we can get into the real meat and potatoes of today's event right before the big race. 90 minutes on the charts coming up ahead of us for today's race. One of the endurance format races coming up is 20 minutes of qualifying here in Imola, and it's already looking to be a bit elbows out amongst the drivers in the pro category, namely Linton and Harris. Behind them there, Thomas Neymeyer, who leads the timing charts in the 95 Mustang. And in the final minutes here before free practice ends and qualifying starts, let's just quickly hop onto the discussion as we quickly see here trouble for Jonathan Barrett in the number 3 McLaren. He spun the wrong way around there. He can't get it righted after Tosa. Something clearly awry. You can see Russell Nash, the pro category winner from last round and currently leading that pro championship, will stay on board with them here as we discuss the balance of performance tweaks coming into Imola today. Now, this is the first we've seen it on TRTN of LFM's performance package making its way on to console. Now, we of course know it is possible, but we've never seen it in execution until this very day. So on a history of firsts here, getting a look through, it's the first we've ever seen a restrictor introduction, and that's for Ford, getting a 20% restrictor for the Mustang at the caveat of a 10 kilo weight reduction. Then looking for BMW and Aston Martin, they're net neutral, no restrictors and no ballast changes. Mercedes and Porsche gaining 11 kilos, McLaren and Ferrari gaining 12. So a very bizarre balance of performance package. Really no seeming gradient or climb there from the negatives to the positives. It's just straight rule of extremes here in Imola. And especially for the Ford Motor Company, that restrictor is going to be doing the dirty work today to keep Ford off of the front of the row, or front of the pack here on that front row. We'll be on to the discussion of qualifying predictions, but dare I say it, we are quite sparse and quite empty-handed here for data coming into round 2 of the championship. Looking on board here with Russell Nash on his way to the line on what appears to be his first flying lap as he makes his way through to 1:43.125, and where we would have predicted before that was a clean sweep to put Nash onto the fastest time of the session. He's playing second fiddle to Thomas Neymeyer, who still leads today's timing sessions at the end of free practice. Nash got across the line just before the end of free practice, so he's still got one more shot here to lead practice. Now, he will be gunning more likely than not, knowing Russell Nash, as some of you may know him better by his online alias, Just Boris, where he's competed for 3 seasons now over on VSR. If any of you do know this man's work, you'll know that he's a bit of a fanatic when it comes to trying to hunt down a Grand Slam, and what a better place to get it than this historic circuit here, the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari. We're just going to catch on with the number 29 on its way to the line as we speak. If we can catch him just before, it's Milan Picconi with BMW on his way to the line then, currently 10th in free practice. This looks to be the end of the line before the start of quali today, and he finishes free practice inside the top 10. So good things on track here for Picconi coming into round 2 of the championship. So back on board then with Nash. And he's not leaving anything up to scraps here, getting that telemetry up, and he invalidates over the Variante Alta. So 20 minutes against the clock here, 20 minutes of qualifying set to follow today. Getting on board with our drivers. First out of the pit lane there, I believe we already saw, is Donnie Linton, the number 24. DNF in last race, if I'm not mistaken there. Linton will be looking for greater results coming into round 2 of the championship. We stay on board with him here. So Donnie Linton leads the charge into qualifying. So just about 20 minutes here in Imola before the end of quali today. This is going to be make or break at the early stages of the championship. Everyone is vying for those powerful positions up front, both in Pro and Am. So there will be technically 2 pole positions today, but only one of them will start at the front of the helm here of this fantastic venue on that first run down towards the Variante Tamburello. And I do expect violence in that section of the track, just as much so as it is in Formula 1, it is in GT. A very tumultuous section of the track to conquer in the modern day. Those revamps since 1994 have made this section slower, but much harder to navigate 2 abreast. So for our drivers today, the real challenge is going to be that drag race, that reaction test down towards turns 2, 3 and 4. Turn 1 will be a breeze. I mean, that is a very slight right hander the drivers will have to come to the undoubtedly insurmountable task of navigating. Compared to turns 2, 3 and 4. So we're still on board with Donnie Linton. On to the discussion of today's qualifying predictions, and as mentioned, the data we were able to scrape up for this one is looking sparse, but for Linton it has him predicted on the second row and ahead of Tom van Lorke. Up that front row at the moment though, Russell Nash and Jonathan Curran separated at the moment by 2.2 seconds, 2.235 seconds. So you want to be very specific there. Elsewhere, Jay Simpson in 5th, Milan Picconi 6th, and Jonathan Barrett the first of the AM drivers right now. Huge black hole in data. Seeing already across the line then, Donnie Linton to become the first driver to take on the flying laps. On his trails there, looking on the map, the number 73 will be next toward the line for these qualifying runs, and that will be Edward Vickery with Lamborghini. Behind him, the 86 being Jason Leatherby's Aston Martin. I do beg the question, how will our drivers navigate this incredibly tight middle sector coming up now? So as we exit Tosa in towards turns 8 and 9, this is a very tough section of the track by any means, and even more so for the front engine juggernauts at BMW. So down into Aqua Minerale we go. Very easy for the back end to swing away from you here. So he's playing things relatively safe, and he runs deep there in through turn 12 and 13. And a lap time that's not invalidated is a lap time you can take. Really, it's sort of the case of any landing is good so long as you can walk away from it there. So that was a bit of trouble at the start for Donnie Linton. Isn't going to be looking too great in the way things reflect in his first qualifying time, so there's always room for improvement with 16.5 minutes left to go. These are just the baby steps for a lot of these drivers here. Getting warmed up, getting a feel for the track conditions at the moment. Bright and sunny conditions, 6:03 p.m. local here in Emilia Romagna. So on his way to the line, first of the times today, then the number 24 of Donnie Linton from the United States. On his way toward the checkered line to become the first time of today. Following on his trail to be the 73 on his way next. That'll be Edward Vickery. So Linton with a 1:44.3. Vickery next to the line. Then the 21 thereafter. That'll be Jonathan Curran. Vickery doesn't set a time. Does Curran? Yes, he does. Up to pole position then for the number 21. Next across the line was Jay Simpson. And right behind him there, Tom Van Locher up to pole position. What a start then for the 79. Porsche on a 1-2 here. Bear in mind, we've still got quite a few gaps in our data. Only 4 legit times on the chart so far. Neymeyer on track, and we saw him fastest in free practice. Then across the line, just gone there, Josh Harris in the 401, up to third fastest, now ahead of BMW and Ford. Next to the line comes the 99. Let's see if we can catch on board here with Alfredo Parilla Vigo. Down in the AM category with Ferrari on his way to the line there. Rocking some classic colours there, the light blue and red of Ferrari's more historical chapter. And what better place to do so than at this very, very historic circuit to the Ferrari company. Named after, of course, Enzo and Dino Ferrari, the founding forefather of the Ferrari company, and then his son Dino Ferrari, who took under his old man's helm. 76 crossed the line as well. Pascal Curran failing to secure a time, so he's on to his first flying lap after this one. 95 next to the line. Here comes Neymeyer. Doesn't set a valid lap there, so was it an outlap for the Mustang, or are there some pressing issues in the works for Neymeyer? We saw him very, very fast through free practice, right at the trailing end of things here. So next on board with a man who started this qualifying session. Has it been redemption then after Aqua Minerale for Donnie Linton? On his way to the line, can he get up ahead of Harris, Curran and Van Locher? He only gets up past Harris there, but still on the front of that second row, has a powerful position to play for. Next to the line comes the number 21. So Jonathan Curran, can he take pole position off of Tom Van Locher? It's an all Porsche front row lockout for the time being. Right behind him comes the 79 as well. So is it an improvement out of Van Locher? In front of him, you can see one of the Fords there. Jay Simpson remains in 5th, has a 4/10 gap to close to Harris at this time. The 86 behind them goes on to another lap. Jason Leatherby with Aston Martin making his way around the Variante Tamburello. The 401 is next to the line. Here comes Josh Harris. Can he take it back from Donnie Linton? No, not this time around. 13, just under 14 minutes left to go in today's session. The 999 is in play here. We just saw Russell Nash across the start-finish line and onto a flying lap. So this could be doomsday for an all-Porsche front row. We know what kind of material this man is capable of producing on qualifying day. I was speaking with Jonathan Curran not long ago, as a matter of fact, and it was a case where drivers were commenting on the fact that this guy is just so unbelievably fast on this grid that it's often demoralizing. And I cracked the joke with Curran saying, you know, rumor has it that Russell Nash's qualifying laps are the secret 11th part of the plagues of Egypt. It's biblical what that McLaren is capable of in his hands. I've never seen the like move so fast, and he dominated Season 7 of VSR Phoenix. He went toe-to-toe, but ultimately missed out in Season 8, and he's back on the form in Season 9. So seeing what he can do here in MSC, already taking home an opening win in Brands Hatch. There's a lot on the table here to play for Russell Nash coming into Season 2. We've just seen as well Thomas Neymeyer up to the fastest time with Ford. The 95, despite that 20% restriction, is not out of the fight for pole position. He's likely to go toe-to-toe then with Russell Nash, who we'll catch on board with in a moment's time. He's just made his way out of the Variante Alta. The 85 is next to the line then, and up to 5th goes Jay Simpson. So a Ford 1.5 at the moment. Sandwiched in between is BMW and Porsche. Next to the line comes the 82, if I'm not mistaken there. So see if we can find here. 32, my mistake. And that is Henro Fori, goes up to 8th fastest. We're going to catch on board with Russell Nash because he had an incredibly fast start. We've just seen Josh Harris up to 4th. What can Russell Nash do then? 12 minutes to play for, up to pole. 1:42.012 for the 999. So already on to quite the brisk start to qualify. Nearly at the halfway mark, as a matter of fact. Better late than never for Russell Nash. Next to the line at the moment, the number 76, Pascal Curran, currently 12th in qualifying. And amongst the AM cars there, will start in Division 5th, making his way to the line. Can he get ahead of Horton and Leatherby? Only ahead of Horton there, so up and ahead of the number 15 Porsche. Speaking of, here is Horton on his way down towards Ravat, so let's stay on board with him just for the end of this lap. On board with David Horton. Behind him, the number 3 as well of Jonathan Barrett, and then the 24 behind the pair of them on their way to the line. That's Donnie Linton in the BMW. You can see that little crimson fleck there of the M4 in the background. We'll follow him with David Horton here in the AM category. Can he get up ahead of Pascal Curran? Is there some fight back in? No, not this time around. The 24 then, let's quickly catch Donnie Linton. Is he back to the top 5 and ahead of Harris? Not this time around either. So plateauing here at the qualifying midway. Next to the line, number 85, if I'm not mistaken there. So let's see if we can catch on board here with Jay Simpson with Ford. Can he make his way to a top 5? He's done so before. Can he do it again? Not on this lap. Number 86 on its way to the line as well. Jason Leatherby. Following on his trails, the number 96. That being Robert Ogan onto his flying lap here. Last time we've seen Robert Ogan, as a matter of fact, was back in Season 2 of the NLRL Sunday League. He competed under this name, at least, with Lexus. We've also seen him compete on several occasions in VSR Phoenix. The 999 just made its way down across the line as well not too long ago. It's actually just out of Tamburello and right on his trails at the moment is the 401 of Josh Harris. Russell Nash then on a 1:41.440. He set an extension on his fastest lap here. Right on his tail here. Trying to follow every inch of the line is Josh Harris. Currently straggling around at the back of that top 5. Now, we saw in the data for qualifying predictions that things were going to get close. We did not anticipate things would be as close as they are. Then the closest gap we saw, taking a look back through the data, was about 5 thousandths of a second here, and that was between Van Lorca and Simpson. We are seeing things unparalleled at the moment, as in execution, it is really, really, really close. Right now, one of the closest gaps we're seeing inside of that top 10 is Harris to Van Lorca. That is Van Lorca. That is about, getting the calculator out here, that's about 25 thousandths of a second you're talking between Tom Van Lorca and Josh Harris. We stay on board here with Harris. And he's had a very brisk lap here. Let's not count him out of the possibility of starting up on that second row. Again, 25 thousandths of a second is the clearing margin between himself and Van Lorca. Curran in 3rd, Neymeyer 2nd. Nash leads by a country mile. You can see up and ahead there is Russell Nash, but we're watching on board with Josh Harris here in the 401 on his way to the line. Nash, could he set an improvement from a 41.4? So it does not appear, but it does appear for Josh Harris as an improvement up and ahead of both the Porsches now, not only for a second row start, but a podium start. And he's ever closer to the possibility there, learning from the line of the 999. He's only a 10th and a 100th out from a front row start. He has to clear that gap to get up to Thomas Neymeyer. So into that second half of qualifying, things have massively hottened up inside of that top 5. Trouble there though for Harris on the exit of Villeneuve. That brings about the end of this current stint for him. Edward Vickery's on his flying lap now down towards Variante Tamburello. We saw trouble down at the Variante Alta back in free practice, and now trouble finds his quarters on the exit of Tamburello. Stability of an all-time concern to Lamborghini coming into today's round. It is not looking good for the Huracan squadron. Next on board with Horton. We last followed David Horton on his way out through Ravazza at the end of one of his last flying laps. Finds himself still at the back of the current logged times, 12th so far, but with Looking at it here, about 5 cars behind him still yet to have set times. That is a position up for grabs, as he is quite dramatically far away from the rest of the field, both him and Pascal Courant. And as we just saw there, across the line went Milan Piconi, already up that position to 11th. 999 on its way to the line then, just quickly catching here Russell Nash into the pits. Where most drivers just bring it into the pits naturally, he's able to drive all the way in. He knows he's got so much time ahead of Niemeyer and Harris. There's going to be a closer battle for the second part of that front row than there is going to be for pole position by the looks of things at the moment. We're on board with Niemeyer. Thomas Niemeyer has had an absolute blinder of a session so far, but 7 tenths, nearly 8 as a matter of fact, between himself and Russell Nash is a hard bargain for him to clear. And we can see he's made at least 2 tenths on it, as he's very nearly to within half a second of pole position, but he's chipping away perhaps a little too slowly for his liking. With 6.5 minutes to go, the chances of him retaking pole position are slim today, but not impossible. It is going to take serious commitment here against the odds. Now, yes, that 10 kilo weight reduction is going to do him some favors, but that restrictor plate on that Mustang is going to nullify any and all advantage it may have had coming into today's round. It's sitting almost dead neutral. Before, LFM's BOP, from memory at least, from speaking with a few different leagues, was at one point super advantageous to have a Mustang in. See VSR Twiglet in chat saying Boris said he would start from the back of the cheat. Yeah, it's still a bit of a tonal whiplash now, actually being able to call Boris by his real name. And he is competing as Russell Nash, so we're allowed to call him Russell Nash. The 85 next to the line. Jay Simpson, can he make his way back to the top 5? He's been a frequent flyer of that over the course of quali today, but with 5.5 minutes to go, Simpson can't make enough ground to Linton in 6th. Down through Tamburello then. That's the end of his stint by any means. So, as we look here, 5 minutes left to go in qualifying at round 2 of the championship. Russell Nash leads the qualifying charts. Thomas Niemeyer in 2nd, Josh Harris 3rd, Jonathan Courant in 4th, and Tom Van Lolke rounds out the top 5. Donnie Linton 6th, Jay Simpson 7th, Alfredo Pereira Vigo in 8th position, Henry Ford in 9th, and Jason Leatherby in 10th. Currently on those pole positions for the pro and overall is Russell Nash, and in the AM category is Alfredo Pereira Vigo. So, a story of 2 here. Leading that AM category in qualifying, at least so far, is Pereira Vigo. He's on the podium for the standings down in the AM category after round 1. Finished 3rd in class at Brands Hatch. Still yet a championship to fight for. And oh, it's a DSQ for Russell Nash. So he's actually followed through on perhaps the unspoken conversation that he has had with VSR Twiglet. Otherwise, I believe VSR Twiglet... Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because you are in my Twitch chat. You are Robert Ogan, aren't you? I had a sneaking suspicion. So I was like, I remember. It's the guy I've covered in 3 series now. Oh, how time flies, and it's still jarring to work around these new names. Niemeyer then takes up pole position. Josh Harris up to 2nd, Jonathan Courant up to 3rd, Van Lolke up to 4th, and Linton back to the top 5. So this is a huge shockwave event here, as Russell Nash will start from the back of the field. After setting, I would definitely say, a bit of a spine-chilling example of the rest of the field there with some of the laps he was setting. Bear in mind, I don't think that was 100% from Russell Nash. I think that was a warning shot we just saw from the 999 there, as he was able to open the taps up on that fastest lap already. That is, it's gonna be quite the fascinating watch there, as now we can see joining the session as well very late into today. Will he actually be able to get the opportunity to qualify as Lorenzo Guasco Baraldo in the number 16? So right now, in qualifying, the new standings as it is, as across the line goes Thomas Niemeyer, who's up to pole position. Josh Harris, as I should say, is in 2nd position. Jonathan Courant in 3rd, Tom Van Lolke 4th, and Donnie Linton in 5th. Alfredo Pereira Vigo. You can tell this is my first time learning this grid. Alfredo Pereira Vigo in 6th, and Jay Simpson in 7th. Henry Ford in 8th, Jason Leatherby 9th, and Milan Piconi up to the top 10. Pascal Courant in 11th. And David Horton in 12th of our current set times. Barrett, Vickery, Ogan, and Guasco Baraldo all yet to have set times on the chart there. But I believe we just... No, we did not just see a a time there. So by the sounds of it, at least from what I'm hearing in the Twitch chat, Robert Ogen is also potentially on the ambition of starting towards the back here. But he may have actually been pitched for that position by the recently joining Lorenzo Guasco-Beraldo, yet to have set a time and, by the looks of it, out of time to do so. So we're left with the drivers still out and orbiting the circuit next to the line as we speak. Having just crossed the line there was the 32 of Henro Fori, currently 8th and second in class there behind Peria Vigo and ahead of Leatherby. We were going to check in with the 86 on its way across the line. That is Jason Leatherby. Sadly not up and ahead of Henro Fori after that last lap. Has to find, looking at it here, about 0.8 of a second thereabouts to Henro Fori's time in the 32 for him to go up in at 8th and up to a division second start. So with a minute and a half left to go, the 95 next across the line will quickly try and grab some data on that. Gone across the line there, 141.785, so now half a second up the road from Harris is Thomas Neymeyer, our new pole sitter. After the DSQ there for Russell Nash, he'll be starting from the back in 17th position for this 90-minute race on the charts. So we'll leave you on board with Josh Harris with a minute left to go. This is his last shot here. We'll be back in just a moment's time and on to the discussion of our 5-minute break window that I've been warned about in advance. And don't worry, we've got quite some interesting news to discuss. We're on board with Harris. So at the formal end of qualifying, still on board with Harris. It is looking very fast here for the 401 and his chances to try and take home a surprise pole position. The gap has been left open there. He needs to find half a second on his personal best to go up and ahead of Thomas Neymeyer. Curran settles in for 3rd there. Van Lorca 4th, Linton 5th. Peria Vigo up to 6th then at the end of today's session. Alfredo Peria Vigo will not be arguing with that. He's on AM position pole, or AM category pole, and starts not only there, but starts inside of those top 3 rows. That's going to be a very powerful position for the Ferrari, but we're on board with the fellow Ferrari here, the 401 of Josh Harris to the line. Can he make half a second on Thomas Neymeyer, or is it going to go for the 95? It's the end of the road for the 401. Thomas Neymeyer, as it stands right now, is on pole here in round 2 of the championship. And so I am told here at the end of a fantastic qualifying session, but plenty of drivers missing out, among them Vickery, Miller, Ogan, Donald, Guasco-Beraldo, and more poignantly, Russell Nash missing out his pole position and is disqualified from round 2's qualifying. He'll be starting down in 19th position. So the end of quali today, so I've been told by race control, that there is a 5-minute break to allow the drivers to recuperate and warm up and get ready, use the bathroom, what have you, make a cup of tea, get ready to rumble, is the bottom line. I have quite a bit of news to discuss with you in the next 5 minutes before we get on to round 2 of the championship, and I am very happy that they didn't give me any restrictions on what I could discuss on the script, because as some of you may very well know, I am a very big rally fan, so there is a lot to discuss in most recent pressing events in regards to World Rally. So 5 minutes here, And let's get on to the discussion of it. The first of the news coming through is that Toyota will they have matched Citroën for the all-time win record, 102 wins, which they took at their inaugural running of the Rally del Paraguay not too long ago. It was won by 8-time WRC champion Sébastien Ogier alongside co-driver Vincent Lande. Toyota won that very event in a 1-2 finish with current championship leaders Elfyn Evans and Scott Martin in second. Another massive shockwave bit of news here comes from the wider world of rallying, and it will coincide with another report coming up in a moment's time, and that is Lancia revealing officially to the public after weeks of being spotted testing in the French countryside the Ypsilon Rally 2. Now, this is a fantastic little bit of news as it reads as an official statement from Lancia themselves. The new Lancia Ypsilon Rally 2 HF Integrale makes its debut, bringing the legendary spirit of Lancia's rally victories into today's motorsport, and this is just the beginning. That last bit, and this is just the beginning. Could they be hinting towards a potential future push past 2027 into Rally 1, with the cost cap being brought down past 2027 to €345,000? Now, logistically, that's not far off what we're dealing with in Rally 2. Could that be perhaps teasing towards that big push, marking potentially their first push to compete at the top level of rally for the first time in over 35 years, with the legendary Delta HF Integrale last making a factory-backed entry with Lancia Martini Racing in the WRC in 1992. And here is a real pressing part here. It's set to make its debut at round 1 of the 2026 World Rally Championship at the 94th running of the Rally Monte Carlo. It arrives onto the market right as the homologation window for one of Stellantis' best rally cars, the Citroën C3 Rally 2, runs up at the end of 2025. This, however, links into a brand new report, and this is fresh off the plate, so this is developing as we speak. Citroën Racing has announced its ambitions to compete as Citroën Racing in the Formula E Championship. Now, in this announcement, among several others on their social media, suggest an imminent reform to Citroën's motorsporting operations, making callbacks to its victories in Dakar, the World Rally Championship, and the World Touring Car Championship, perhaps suggesting it may yet again compete in all as a more involved, factory-driven operation. Could this be the signs then of a perhaps upcoming civil war amongst the Stellantis Auto Group between Lancia and Citroën for the new top dog step in rallying in the near future, with the Ypsilon looking to take central stage after the C3? We could be seeing a bit of an arms race here after Lancia's quiet collapse at the turn of the millennium back in the late 1990s, as Citroën went on to dominate and, as a matter of fact, terrorize the world stage for upwards of 2 decades. With the 94th running of the Rally Monte Carlo in less than half a year from now, we may soon find out, as Lancia is set to become one of the most highly anticipated returns of any manufacturer in the WRC to have actually made its way to reality. Meaning tough break for Subaru fans who are still left without answers. And now, relating back to Subaru very quickly, this is in that discussion of the 2027 regs for Rally 1. As we know, the FIA safety cell was brought in at the dawn of Rally 1 in 2022. It serves as a common chassis structure for manufacturers of the current day, meaning to within some degree, the cars we see in the rally are silhouettes of their road-going counterparts, having lost the requirement to homologate under the guise they are classified as a Category 2 purpose-built racing vehicle. The 2027 regs open this up to allow for the integration of SUV and sedan body types, as standard production frames have been allowed to creep back in, previously being permitted under traditional regulation, but seldom ever used by the big three at Ford, Hyundai, or Toyota. The last point being very poignant because what is one manufacturer that currently runs a sedan-bodied rally car at the top level of its championship regulation structures and is hotly awaited by fans for a return to the WRC? None other than Subaru Motorsport USA themselves, with the VT23R, which is on your screens at the moment. In the 2025 American Rally Association National Rally Championships, it makes 330 brake horsepower. That's only 50 off what the hybridless Rally 1s are making in 2025. That's about 380 we're talking here. So this opening of the regulations allows for not only Lancia to creep back in, potentially up to Rally 1, but it could also open the barn gate doors here for a return of brands like Subaru. We're in the 30-second warning then, and that is our rant out of the way, as that was A lot going on in the world of rallying and also up into Formula E. Previously, Citroën was involved in the sport under the DS Penske group, under the DS Automotive label, their luxury brand, of course, that was introduced a few years back. But this seems to be that greater commitment on the horizon for Citroën. Could it be a move away or toward rally is another thing entirely. They have announcements coming up in October. So, off of the news now, we're on board with Thomas Neymeyer onto the formation lap here of round 2 of the MSC GT3 season in Season 2. And it was a solid lap indeed by Neymeyer, and I think he's definitely been served a bit of a Hail Mary solution by the disqualification of Russell Nash. He starts in 18th position alongside Lorenzo Guasco-Beraldo. As a matter of fact, getting a look through that grid, it's Neymeyer from Harris, Curran and Van Lorca in the top 4. Then Linton in 5th. Paria Vigo starts at the front of the AMPAC in 6th overall. Simpson in 7th. Forey on your screens here in 8th position. Leatherby in 9th. Barrett in 10th. Then further down, Picorni, Curran, Horton, Vickery, and Donald from 11th to 16th there. Then Ogan, then Guasco-Beraldo, then Nash. Looking at that front row, why DSQ asked Christian LeBay in chat. I'm not 100% sure myself. I think it was some kind of unspoken agreement between Ogan and Nash. Ogan basically daring Nash, why don't you start from the back of the field if you're that fast? And he's rather surprisingly took him up on that gambit. So that is definitely quite bizarre. Now, that's a working theory, not exactly the truth, and we can't confirm that from where we stand at the moment, but it's a pretty solid theory considering what we saw in chat earlier on. See here from the perspective of Josh Harris, he lines up on that front row. It's an all Porsche second row with Jonathan Curran and Tom Van Lorca in the 21 and the 79. They start 3rd and 4th. Donnie Linton, definitely one of the faster cars at a straight line there, where BMW could have the Porsches for breakfast down to the Variante Tamburello. He needs one good lunge there off the line to get himself free of Alfredo Paria Vigo in 6th. As you can see there, there's Paria Vigo. Starts at the front of the AMPAC. Let's get back on board, though, with the start of the Pro Pack and the start of the overall grid of today's race. Thomas Neymeyer with Ford in the number 95 Mustang. That restrictor has done very little to keep Ford off of the front row. It has done even less with the sudden gambit between Ogan and Nash to now put Ford on the top step for the start of today's race. 90 minutes we have to play with here in Imola for round 2 of the championship. Just before we get down to Ravazza then, looking at the calendar. Now, this is a bit of a brain teaser here. As you can see, Hungaroring in Indianapolis shown as round 1 and 2. Server complications have pushed those two to the back of the season. So that makes Brands Hatch and Imola your new round 1 and 2. And that follows thereafter with Hungaroring and Indianapolis set to become round 9 and 10. Wrap your head around that, but the borderline is we're in the first of our endurance races then, as Brands Hatch becomes the new provisional first round of the championship. So too does this become the first endurance round, to make any sense of that. So 90 minutes against the clock here as we make our way out of Ravazza. Warming up the vocal cords for this one. Big swig of the drink here for us here in the commentary box. Can't even imagine the pressure going on up front here amongst these drivers, as it's 18 cars in all, 9 either side of it, here for round 2 of season 2 of the MSC GT3 series. On our way to the line then, all hell is about to break loose here at the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Dino Ferrari, as it is set to become once more a battleground of racing talent here. Without further ado, as we roll 9 cars either side of it, 18 in all to the line. And without further ado, after the long crawl toward turn 1, we are green and racing here. 90 minutes against the clock, an hour and a half to be specific, and a great start from the front row, an even better start from the second row. You can see already Curran and Van Lorca trying to get up alongside Neymeyer and Harris, but it's Neymeyer from Harris now up to third. You can see the two Porsches side by side. Van Lorca makes contact with Curran and goes down the field. Spinning out in the background, that was Paria Vigo. It's calamity on the race start. You can see several cars caught up in the midst there. Among them was Paria Vigo, and I believe as well also caught up among them. You can see the 99, the 79, all manner of mayhem. And in the background, turned around, there goes, I believe that was Milan Picorni, turned around by Lorenzo Guasco-Beraldo. It is bedlam for the start of today's race. Running scared through the madness then is Robert Ogan, right up to the back of Jonathan Barrett. potentially eyeing up 9th position from the race start is nothing short of a miracle here. I don't think he was expecting to be up so soon as he makes his way to Piratella down at turn 9. He's up to 9th. Right behind him, there's Jonathan Barrett. Then behind him is Leroy Donald and Russell Nash. Back in the green flags, but it's almost immediately back to yellow as there Edward Vickery turned around by Pascal Curran. It is an absolute demolition derby here in Imola. Looking over the back end of Robert Ogan's car, if you can see it over the monstrously large wing of that Porsche, all hell breaking loose at the Variante Alta. Almost 4 abreast there. Wrap your head around that. I have never seen a start kick off to be so chaotic. Trying to get a look at amongst the field there. One of the drivers most heavily affected by it, now 18th, is Alfredo Parilla Vigo. Started in 6th and at the lead of the AM category is now down dead last. And it's contact again, this time Leroy Donald. And I believe that was Tom van Locher. That has all gone horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. Rejoining the track, what was Leroy Donald thinking there? He held up Milan Picconi in the number 29. This is a disastrous start by all accounts here. We can see now side by side Jason Leatherby and Lorenzo Guasco Beraldo. Right behind them, Jonathan Barrett looking to take off the helmets. Contact between himself and Guasco Beraldo. Turned around at Tamburello. Yellow flags out then for turns 2, 3, and 4. Coming up very quickly, Picconi, Donald, and Parilla Vigo. That has all gone horribly, horribly wrong on so many accounts so far. Russell Nash now up to 10th, up 8 positions in just under 2 laps. You can see up and ahead, Ogan v Curran set to kick off in a moment's time. Edward Vickery got turned around not long ago either. So all manner of thing kicking off. Having a look up the field as well, just quickly getting a gander here between Horton and Van Lorca down to Piratella at turn 9. Running out wide, there goes Horton. So Van Lorca back up to the inside, he's up to 11th. Let's get a look, though, inside of that top 10. We can see Robert Ogan looking to get the leg up here on Edward Vickery. Right behind him, here comes Russell Nash up to 9th. On board with Robert Ogan. Down into the Variante Alta. This is quite the scary sight indeed for Ogan. He's about to see, I'm calling it now, disaster. I am calling it now. It is going to be bloody. Heading down into Ravazza, and it very much so is. Off goes first then for Pascal Curran. Has to rejoin behind Russell Nash right into the iron sights of Robert Ogan, and the two get side by side, fortunately without contact. So up to 9th then goes Robert Ogan, and then up to 8th goes Nash, up to 7th goes Vickery. Donnie Linton up to 3rd then. Amongst the madness of today's race start, Josh Harris in 2nd, and Thomas Neymeyer leads the charge in today's race. After just under 4 minutes, as we approach the 4-minute mark as we speak, that has been, by all accounts, one of the craziest race starts I think I may have ever seen. You can see here Milan Picconi looking to get side by side with Alfredo Parilla Vigo. Parilla Vigo on the revenge drive already. I must point this out. He started in 6th. He's down 10 positions from the race start. Looking to be pressured there by Picconi. Picconi just cannot find the line through the Variante Tamburello. See here from the perspective of Josh Harris, he has lost sight of Thomas Neymeyer, the number 95, up the field at the moment. Behind him, Donnie Linton and Jonathan Curran are closing in at a rapid rate of knots here. 5 minutes into today's session, you can see there's the Mustang, and we're watching on board with the black and blue 401 of Josh Harris. That has been a serious blunder start for quite a few there. We did say it was going to get violent down at Tamburello, and I am not disappointed with the result we got at hand, as it was bloodied down at 2, 3, and 4. Looking around the field, as we can see battles start to emerge, a car going all the way off, and we were following on board with Lorenzo Guasco Beraldo's point of view of things. We get a look behind to see precisely who that was. Now out behind the number 16, it's Milan Picconi. Disaster today for BMW, and for the number 29. That looks to be a steering rack damage as well. He can't keep the car out of the wall. He jumps over the Variante Alta, clatters the wall there. That is a man holding the throttle down. He has had enough of today. Really, on a start like that, could you blame him? Fortunately, he's not taking anyone with him on that this time around. That is quite a nasty bounce there. And off short of Ravazza. That's just pure frustration we're seeing there from Picconi. That is a man thoroughly throwing the towel in. So already the death toll up to 1, with Picconi seemingly out of today's race. Bear in mind, last round was 9 DNFs. I don't expect there to be that push to break the record today. Actually, as I speak, I just want to point this out. We do, as I'll catch up in a moment's time, yellow flag out for Tambirello, the number 14, and the number 3 caught up in the midst of it. So Barrett and Donald down in 16th and 17th now, both in the AM category, in trouble. Perhaps contact between the pair of them down at turns 2, 3, and 4. Now they make their way to the Variante Villeneuve. Jonathan Barrett now up and ahead of Leroy Donald. Down into Tosa. What will Donald be thinking of doing here? Covering off the outside, so it were. Trying to stop him from carrying any more momentum to the inside there is Jonathan Barrett. Back into green flag conditions. Milan Picorni is into the pit lane, so that is a good sign here. He's been able to get the BMW back into the pit lane. Seeing here with Russell Nash, he's up to 7th. Edward Vickery going wide out of the Variante Alta. We know that's an area of contention for Lamborghini in today's race, as we've just seen over in free practice only about 20 or so minutes ago. Speaking of, there is Edward Vickery. 0.9 of a second from the McLaren, but he's going to quickly lose sight here. Russell Nash seems to be a man on a mission. Looking further down the line, we can see David Horton versus Jason Leatherby down in the AM category. So after what has been an incredibly chaotic start so far, Thomas Neymeyer leads today's session. Donnie Linton now up to 2nd. We missed out on that move. We could see, though, the fight back here by Josh Harris, who was down in 3rd for but a moment. Could he fight back to the front row there, side by side to the Variante Villeneuve, retaking position as we caught the second half of that battle is Josh Harris. A brilliant move there by the 401, back up and ahead of Linton. Curran right behind the pair of them there. Jonathan Curran in the 21, right on top of this fight for 2nd. As a matter of fact, we'll stay on board with these 3 drivers. We'll recount these standings in a moment's time. Let's get on board with the driver at the back of the pack here to get a front row seat to the fight up ahead for 2nd. We're on board here with Jonathan Curran in the number 21 Porsche, as he watches from a very close distance, mind you, the battle for 2nd. Down into the Aqua Minerale. He could functionally find himself in a moment's time in a fight for 3rd, as peeling away a bit there through Sector 2 is Josh Harris in the 401 up the field there, that blue Ferrari. Then right in front of him, the red BMW of Donnie Linton. From the point of view of Jonathan Curran, 2nd could be ripe for the taking here. He knows these two are willing to get elbows out, but how far are they willing to push the envelope on what is acceptable on track, as things could get bloodied. Down into Ravazza, covering off the inside. We can see already there by Harris, covering off Linton, but still using the full racing line, Jonathan Curran. Out through turn 18 then, so as we go back onto the opening straight, you can see in the background, slowly creeping into frame there, is Russell Nash, now behind Henry Fori, who leads the AM category here. Could be on for a maiden AM win by the end of today's race. Bear in mind, it's only been 10 minutes in, and it has been a serious shake-up. Down at Tambirello then, the 401 from the 24 from the 21, and bouncing off track goes Donnie Linton. Getting a look at that on the replays, you can see how it played out, and we can actually watch it play out in slow motion for fun here. As you can see, getting up and over the curb. So we're watching with Jonathan Curran. He's in that fight for 2nd. 1 bounce, then 2. Those kicker curbs can be lethal here in Imola. Henry Fori briefly up to 5th there. Got side by side with Donnie Linton. There was a brief exchange on the data charts there. We'll cut away from Jonathan Curran to get a look at further around the field, as there could be a fight in a moment's time here. Tom Van Lorca's up to 9th and up and ahead of Robert Ogan. There could yet be fight back from the 96. They exit Tosa. Looking further up the field, Henry Fori, we saw him get briefly side by side with Donnie Linton, but now getting up and ahead of him is Russell Nash. So let's see if we can catch on board here. Donnie Linton is in a very precarious spot. He does not now want to be out past Jay Simpson. Moreover, he does not want the 999 to be next, taking him on here for position. Exiting Variante Alta. Another bounce. That suspension rebound is just killing any and all fun that he's having here in Imola. It has been the absolute bane of his performance today. And forfeiting position, rather begrudged there. The 24 having lost out 2 positions, now behind Simpson and now Nash. In the background, we see Vickery up the inside of Fori. Fori down to 8th. Josh Harris now clearing the gap between himself and Jonathan Curran. He's up to 2nd after retaking that off of a brief spat with Donnie Linton. Now, who, as we saw there, is down to 6th. It's really not been BMW's day here in the opening 10 minutes. Now looking at where things stand, Thomas Niemeyer with a confident lead at the moment has got quite the healthy gap, nearly 10 seconds as it stands between himself and Josh Harris. Big slide for the 401. He's kept it though. Out through Villeneuve. Curran on his tail in the background. We can see Jay Simpson runs wide. Out through Villeneuve is side by side. Could he attack for the inside at Tosa on Russell Nash? No, Nash with the fastest lap. Now up to 4th. Right behind Jay Simpson then returns Donnie Linton, Edward Vickery and Henro Forey. Then further down the field, Tom Van Lorca and Robert Ogan to round out the top 10. Jason Leatherby in 11th, David Horton in 12th. Alfredo Pereira Vigo is up a few positions from what has been a calamity start for the man who started on AM pole. Leroy Donald 14th and Jonathan Barrett in 15th. So it has been quite a rip-roaring start here. We're down 4 cars already in today's race. The death toll only set to continue to rise. We're back on board with Josh Harris now as he's looking to defend position off of Jonathan Curran. Things could get very, very lively. As you can see, approaching at a rate of knots here. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Russell Nash could be finding his way into this fight here for second in a moment's time. The 401 then in defensive posture. We're on with Josh Harris. In that fight for second, things could get ugly here as these 3 drivers are set to clash on track. Right behind them, you can see Donnie Linton's got his hands full trying to take on Jay Simpson. Right behind him is Henro Forey, now leading in the AM category. Niemeyer now up 13.5 seconds up the field. It has been a very confident start for the 95. Josh Harris, though, is the man with his hands full up on the podium as he's looking to fend off not only the car in 3rd place, but the car charging from behind here, started at the back of the field, is right now on the precipice of being on the podium before we've even hit halfway. Nay, before we've even hit quarter way of today's race. This could get ugly. Side by side into Tosa in the background. Curran vulnerable to Nash. Nash up to 3rd. Curran trying for a switchback. Just can't find it uphill. The McLaren's got him pitched there. Twin turbos always going to give a little bit more shunt than a naturally aspirated flat 6. Josh Harris now sweating bullets as the next man to step into frame for the chance of second place is the man who was going to start on pole position. Started from the back to prove a point. Russell Nash is right on his trails here. It is a matter, I dare say, of when and not if Nash will get side by side with Harris, and how well can Harris cope once that McLaren gets up in striking distance. It is not too far out from it now. Into the Variante Alta we go. It's Harris from Nash, from Curran, Simpson in the top 5. We just seen Edward Vickery up and ahead of Donnie Linton, but that was because he cut the Variante Alta. Down towards Ravazza. We're still on that fight for second. Harris v Nash. 0.2 of a second. He's in striking distance. Running deep goes the 401. It's contact between himself and the 999. Through comes Jonathan Curran. Could he be up 1 position? Yes. Can he be up 2? It's a very likely possibility. On the exit of turn 18 comes turn 19. The Porsche right alongside the Ferrari. It is a drag race down to Tamburello. Who succeeds first? Up and ahead. Back into single file for a moment's time here is Josh Harris, but he has got quite the weight on his shoulders. Down towards Tamburello, looking for the inside, trying to fake him out was Jonathan Curran, and he very nearly looks to succeed around the outside. It is blindsiding. A move like that, the 21 up to second. Josh Harris down to 3rd. I have never seen the like that. That takes a serious set of stones to pull a move like that off. What a move by Jonathan Curran, up to second and ahead of Josh Harris. Harris, though, not down and out of this fight. He's got fire in his lungs yet. And as we can see right up ahead, only 0.2 of a second, the same gap it was but a moment ago between himself and Curran, just flipped on its head. He's got just as much opportunity to fight back on the Porsche as the McLaren does to fight against him. We're in an equal opportunity brawl here for that second place. A little bit of desync here isn't going to be helping us all too much, but down through Aqua Minerale looks to settle itself down a bit. Good Lord above. The opening 15 minutes and we are not dry for content. We are not dry for good overtakes neither. The number 15 in trouble after Tamburello. So that, yes, does appear to be some trouble there for David Horton in the AM category. Now at the back of the field in 15th. Still on board with Harris. Still in that fight for second. But you can see rendezvousing with this fight as it stands right now is Jay Simpson and Donnie Linton. So we are looking at, and I really do say this with a grain of salt, a 5-man fight for second place. Right now, it stands more likely in the court of these two right now, Josh Harris or perhaps Russell Nash. Russell Nash is trying his luck now. We are definitely seeing less so that fight for second and more so that fight for third between the pair, but lunging it for the Tamburello chicane. He holds his nerve. Can he hold off Russell Nash? By the time we get to Villeneuve, he's still right on his trails here. Looking over the rear view, practically pushing him down towards turn 5 and 6 at the Variante Villeneuve. Meanwhile, Donnie Linton up and ahead of Jay Simpson. Big slide by the number 85 in the background there. We're still watching with Harris and Nash covering all manner of bases here. Can Harris handle the pressure? So it seems the answer right now is yes. Russell Nash, though, is a man on a mission. He started in 18th position. He's up 14 positions in under 30 minutes. Down towards Aqua Minerale. He's not showing any signs of slowing down. We're going to try and catch on board with the attacking point of view of things here from the pro category. Russell Nash in the 999. One with the fastest lap at Brands Hatch, now playing mind games with the rest of the field. Is it a bit of a turkey shoot today for Russell Nash? One does wonder. That's no disrespect to the rest of the drivers here, but if this is the kind of driving come to be expected this season out of Nash, I don't know if many drivers stand a hope if he manages to get back up to pole come round 3 and beyond. Bear in mind, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. 90 minutes on the clock here. 15 minutes have already given us more action than could last a lifetime here in GT3. But there is still a lot yet to be decided. An hour and 12 minutes then left to go in round 2. Nash looking to get up and alongside Harris. You can see Curran just up the road from the pair of them, slowly being reeled in. Nash trying for around the outside. It's going to be a more aggressive line through Tamburello. In the background, you can see Donnie Linton and Jay Simpson still in arms in that fight for the top 5. You see Nash now getting up to the rear right quarter. He's trying for something here. He's trying to fake out Harris into a move to defend early through Villeneuve, and he ultimately ends up scrubbing momentum on that 401, giving Nash a better look for a potential switchback move here. So he's gone for the outside, trying for the later apex and going uphill. This is where that major issue arises. Tosa's a great corner to try and go side by side, and it's much, much harder to scope up moves like that because you are... Oh, it's contact between the 401 and the 99. It's disaster. I did not expect things to kick off the way they did. My word. Up towards Piratella. What on earth has gone on between Harris and Nash? It's disaster. Covering him off there. Brakes earlier. Clipped there. I'm not entirely sure who's to blame for that. But that got incredibly ugly. That caught me so off guard. My God. Out through outer. That's damage for the 999 by any accounts, surely. Definitely feeling the effects more, though, is going to be that 401. Let's see if we can find Josh Harris. He's actually behind at the moment here. By the looks of it, Henro Fori, and even more trouble for him on the exit of Alta. And there, into the wall, Josh Harris in serious trouble here. The yellow flags are out for Sector 3. The 401 is in serious despair after that incident. Is this the end of the road for Josh Harris? It was such a promising defense there, and he's just been absolutely shoulder checked off of turn 9. There was going to be words in the paddock, make no mistake of it, and I cannot guarantee all of them can be said on air. So we're going to cut away from the 401. An hour and 10 left to go then. On board with Alfredo Perea Vigo now in the number 99 as he gets closer and closer to Jason Leatherby up in 11th. Looking at where that stands after nearly 20 minutes of racing, that's currently still a podium in AM. So these drivers still within their rights to fight for the lead of the AM category. Right now, Henro Fori has got them both on track and in that standings miles up the road. As where it stands right now, 20 minutes in, Thomas Neymar leads the charge still after 20 minutes in. It's been steely determination by the 95. He's got a very healthy gap at this stage of the race. He's got this in the palm of his hand, just has to keep good consistency, and a race win could be up for grabs in the pro category. Jonathan Curran in second place. He's only 1.1 seconds up the road here from what has been the grim reaper of the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari, that being Russell Nash. And that road to third place has now been bathed in blood, or paved in blood, I should say. The 999 up to third, but at what cost? Behind him, Jay Simpson under siege here from Donnie Linton and Edward Vickery, the next battle of today. So we'll be getting on board with those three in a moment's time. Henro Fori in 7th, Tom Van Locke in 8th position, Robert Ogan in 9th, and Jason Leatherby into the top 10. Alfredo Perea Vigo closing in, could be looking at an AM class 2nd place fight in a moment's time. They'll be fighting for 10th on track. Leroy Donald behind them in 12th, Jonathan Barrett in 13th, David Horton in 14th, and Josh Harris, the latest, onto a potential death toll here in round 2 of the championship. It has been disastrous as we see both Leatherby and Perea Vigo cutting over the Variante Alta. Now, no one has yet to receive a penalty for doing so, but if this keeps up in the next hour and 8 minutes, make no mistake, it is coming. On board with Russell Nash, hunting down Jonathan Curran, but we're going to get a view on board now as the positions continue to swap. Now, I feel it a bit of a disservice to these three to not give them the spotlight for these next couple of minutes on track, as Edward Vickery, Jay Simpson and Donnie Linton have been ripping each other's limb from screaming limb in the last 22 minutes of racing. I don't think they have stood in a standard formation at least once in any lap of this race so far. It has constantly been a different way around for these three. We're on board with Vickery, the man in the middle, then got up and ahead of Donnie Linton. Jay Simpson next in his iron sights for 4th place. Up through Aqua Minerale we go then on the exit of turn 13. Up the road, you can see Curran v Nash about to kick off at a moment's notice. We're watching with this holy trinity, as it were, Ford, Lamborghini and BMW up through the Variante Alta. Jay Simpson is looking ice cold here in the 85. Already it's a Ford leading this race, and it's a Ford up in the top 4. So Ford in some way on both of those front rows. The 96 in trouble. Robert Ogan with a bit of bother over the Aqua Minerale, but off the track goes Jay Simpson, and now he's behind Donnie Linton, giving free reign of 4th place up to Edward Vickery. We're on board then with the 73, now promoted up to 4th. In the background, we'll get a gander on board with the BMW and the Ford in a moment's time. Let's take a look around the field as we see closer than ever now. Jason Leatherby versus Alfredo Perea Vigo. Perea Vigo, by the way, started in 6th for today's race, dropped down to the back of the field after a calamity start down at Tamburello. This could get nuclear between the pair of them, though, as he's looking to fight back into the top 10. Could it be redemption day then here in Ravazza for Alfredo Perea Vigo? Jason Leatherby has got something to say about that. The 86 holding on to 10th for the time being. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. There's our race leader at the moment, Thomas Neymeyer, out through the Aqua Minerale section. We can now see Jay Simpson having lost ground to Donnie Linton after the runoff down at Ravazza, last lap gone. Jonathan Curran having lost the position now out to Russell Nash. He has to make 20 seconds of time up to Thomas Neymeyer. And by the time he does so, will those tyres be cooked out? Neymeyer has the much more comfortable stance of 2 up on that front row. Curran now playing backseat from the start of the 2nd row, and the back of that podium will still take home solid points results in the pro category if he can hold where he is on track and keep himself out of the centre of attention for Vickery and Linton and Simpson in the battle behind them. Van Locke was one such casualty caught up in the fray at the start of today's race, and now the 79 is back up into the top 10. Belgian in the 79 making his way down towards Ravazza, then 2.5 seconds from Henro Fori. Robert Ogan 16.5 seconds behind him makes a Porsche 7, 8 and 9 here towards the back of that top 10. Nearly 30 minutes in then, and it has not been a dull start here in Imola. It has been anything but. It has been a road paved in the blood and viscera of both man and machine alike then, in what was biblical scenes of calamity. But we do have quite the shocker announcement. The number 95 brings the yellow flags out. Thomas Neymeyer in trouble. He ran wide out of turn 7 at Tosa. Now, that was a real shock to the system there as we fought the worst for it of the number 95, but it has sliced his gap down to half its distance. What was 20 seconds is now 10 between himself and Russell Nash. So this has gone horribly asunder for Thomas Neymeyer. We don't currently have to hand exactly what the cause of that incident was. We do know that he's gone wide, but we don't know if there has been any further damage from what we can visually see on the car right now. And judging on the fact that its performance doesn't seem to have been stunted after whatever incident had occurred, we can assume that most of the car, if not a good 100% of it, or a good 90 to 100% of it, is okay. And it's just a little bit of a bruise there on the performance for Neymar today. Not something that he can't come back from, as he's already looking to push the taps here on the gap between himself and Russell Nash. He's still struggling to keep it in and around 10 seconds, but you can see the determination for the 95 to continue this wide double-figure gap of this race. Gap for the lead of this race. As for Jonathan Curran, he's stuck in the middle here. 3.5 seconds, nearly 4 now, between himself and Russell Nash, and what was 3.5 seconds is also nearly 4 between himself and Edward Vickery, who I believe is coming into the pit lane. The Lamborghini is in. So Edward Vickery, off of his own volition, so it seems, has brought that Lamborghini into the pit lane. Bear in mind, the game isn't stipulating a mandatory pit stop, but it did say in the regulations a mandatory fuel and tyre stop. So we are left in a bit of a grey zone here, as it were. The number 99 now in trouble. We're going to catch on board as the 401 was caught up in the mix of it as well. So that's for Josh Harris and Alfredo Perea Vigo. Both in trouble now. Harris at the back of the field. He's back on track. So fair play to Josh Harris. He has seen this one through, but he has now found himself into another spat, this time with the former pole position sitter for the AM category, starting from 6th at the start of today's race, Alfredo Perea Vigo. And there is Perea Vigo. More damage, starting to latch on really to that 99. He has not had a particularly fun time in the opening 30 minutes, but with an hour still left to go before the checkered flag, there is still plenty of opportunities today for him to come and fight back for a top 10 finish. Leroy Donald, 6.5 seconds up the field from him. It is not an impossible feat for the 99 today. Here is Leroy Donald chasing down Jason Leatherby. So these are all in the AM category fights right now. We'll stay on board with Donald on his way down towards Tosa. So Leatherby in sight here. Behind him is Alfredo Perea Vigo. Henro Fori still up the field by over half a minute here to the lead of AM, up in 7th place. Robert Ogan in between himself and the rest of the AM podium, being Leatherby and Donald. Down towards turn 9. Looking at where things stand, another car into the pit lane. I believe it to be Horton. Yes, it is. The number 15 of David Horton. He's into the pit lane as we speak. We did see quite a lot of damage for a few of the Porsches on track. This seems to be no different. Whether or not it's a case that Horton's come in to patch up a few repairs or if he needs new tyres is another question entirely. Nearest fights on track at the moment, Tom van Lorca versus Henro Fori. So a fight between Pro and AM's Porsches is a curious sight indeed. We'll catch on board with these two in a moment's time. We quickly check back in on Leatherby v Donald. Down towards Ravazza, the Aston Martin still holding 9th and ahead of Leroy Donald. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time, though. We do want to see what is the state of affairs in that fight between the two Porsches. Van Lorca versus Fori. That's half a second apiece between the pair of them. Checking briefly back in here on Leatherby v Donald. You got to keep your eyes on stalks for races like this. Jason Leatherby is really doing his best here to try and hold up Leroy Donald. And, oh, off the track goes Leroy Donald. Massively underpins his brakes, cuts through Tamburello, loses quite a lot of time there. That could be the invitation Alfredo Perea Vigo has been waiting for all this time there. That gap's going to be sliced down between himself and Perea Vigo, and that's worked rather nicely into the hands of Jason Leatherby. So, on board with the next fight on track here, as it now brings itself out to about a second. It was at its closest about 4 attempts between Tom van Lorca and Henro Fori, between Pro and AM. This is in that fight for 6th place on track. Things could yet still get very spicy here for the 79 and the 32. Down towards Ravazza we go. The 79 then leading ahead. 1.2 seconds between himself and Henro Fori. Henro Fori, I must say, has had quite the interesting little race so far. 1.3 seconds behind being in 6th place, which was the position that the pole sitter for AM was starting today's race from. Henro Fori could be on his charts here, on his way to the first of perhaps many AM victories for the 32. It's been a very exciting race for him so far. Definitely one of his best performances. With 59 minutes left to go, though, we haven't seen anything yet. As we cut away from these two to take a look around the rest of the field, Robert Ogen has also been playing quite a dangerous gambit today, like Russell Nash. Both of them started towards the back of the field and encapsulated around them on the inside was Lorenzo Guasco-Beraldo at the back of that field. Guasco-Beraldo, I believe, is out of this race, and Nash at the moment is on his charts to pursue the lead of this race. Is not actually too far away from it. He's up to second, and Ogen is up to eighth. So both of them having had quite a diligent fight up to a top 10 position. Looking around the track, where could our next fights be coming from? Things have simmered down at the moment in that fight between Leroy Donald and Jason Leatherby. Russell Nash is slowly reeling in Thomas Neymeyer, but nothing to report from the front row so far. No further issues for Neymeyer in the Mustang. 42.9 was his last lap. We'll see what the lap is out of Russell Nash on his way to the line of 42.8. So slowly but surely reeling in the 95 Mustang. In between the pair of them, Edward Vickery. After that surprise pit stop, you can see a lot of the damage on that Lamborghini, minor as it was, has been repaired. So a bit of a clean slate here for the number 73, now down in 13th and 7 seconds from the nearest position, that being Jonathan Barrett in 12th. And we do have yellow flags out. It's for the number 14 down at the Aqua Minerale. Let's get on board then with the car involved. Looking around the field here as he's made his way back up into the charge is Leroy Donald. So that has given quite the healthy bit of confidence to Leatherby and Paria Vigo. Paria Vigo now up to the podium. Further trouble for Leroy Donald now out at the Variante Alta. And with dirt in those Pirellis, it's not going to get any easier for the number 14. Back in the green flags then as he rejoins after the Variante Alta. Scorned there out of the podium. You can come to see the physical gap there just as we follow with Jonathan Barrett in the number 3, sorry, not in third, in 12th. In the background, you can see the gap slowly getting closer and closer between himself and Edward Vickery's Lamborghini. Closer still, and this is really quite a stark example of the pace up on the front row here. Neymeyer in front of him, Nash closing in fast. And from where the gaps are suggesting at the moment, that gap has now come down from what was 9 seconds to perhaps 7. So we'll have to check in on the data there. 1:43.082 was the last lap then by Thomas Neymeyer. We're on with Russell Nash again now with Edward Vickery in front of him. Crosses for a 1:42.5, so he was half a second faster on the last lap just gone. Could this be the requiem knell for Neymeyer's lead of today's race? He was given a wing and a prayer here with the disqualification of Nash in qualifying, of which I believe was administered voluntarily. We'll have to catch on with that in a moment's time. The number 96 of Robert Ogen's in trouble after the Variante Alta. So let's see if we can catch on board here. He has rejoined the track since, but we'll try and weigh up what the scope of the damage was looking like for him here. As into the pits comes Tom Van Locker. Here's Robert Ogen. And it does look like more than just the sum of some damaged wheels. You can see front and rear scrapes there on the diffuser and on the front aero. And that is the reinforcing factor for Robert Ogen to take a trip to the pit lane. Here's the green flags come back out. 56 minutes left to go then here in Imola. And it has been an incredible start to today's race. Rife with action and still plenty yet to follow. Where it stands at the moment then, Thomas Neymeyer leads but by a diminishing gap, as now on the same stretch of road comes Russell Nash. Russell Nash in second with the fastest lap of today's race. Bear in mind, and I want to continue to reiterate this point over the course of this race, he started from the back of an 18-car race, is up 16 positions and could yet lead just off pace alone. Jonathan Curran in third, and in fourth, Donnie Linton. Jay Simpson in fifth, Henry Forey in 6th, Leatherby in 7th as Tom Van Locker takes his run into the pit lane. Alfredo Paria Vigo up to 8th. Van Locker still yet to have exited the pits. That puts Leroy Donald up at extra position to 9th. Jonathan Barrett could find his way up to 10th here as he gets up and past Tom Van Locker. Right behind him is Russell Nash. So this is a exciting time here for Barrett. Closest he's been to Nash in this race so far, and you can see he's definitely been forced asunder on those lines, and that puts Edward Vickery right in striking distance for 11th place on track. This is set to hot up here between the 73 and the 3. We'll watch down into the Variante Villeneuve. Seceding position then goes Jonathan Barrett as Edward Vickery's up to 11th, now 10th as it stands, as the position of Tom Van Locker is finally verified. Henro Fori is into the pit lane, so as it stands, that regulation on mandatory pit stops does continue to persist in today's race. The drivers coming in then one after the other next into the pits at the moment. The current AM leader, Henro Fori. Now, as it stands, Jason Leatherby will go on to lead in the AM category from Fori's pit stop as it currently stands at the moment until he himself takes a run into the pit lane. In the background is Alfredo Pereira Vigo, still scorned by what happened on lap 1, is still adamant that he can bring things back to a category win in the AM. Leroy Donald quite a ways back there. Could he be making a potential move to the pits? No, not at all there. The 14 stays out. A drive-through penalty, though, befalls the 73. Edward Vickery, much like the story of Icarus, has flown too close to the sun and his wings have melted up. As now a drive-through penalty has hit the 73 from 10th place there, briefly just making his move up past Jonathan Barrett, has been struck down with the wrath of the stewards. Into the pits he goes then to serve that drive-through. That's great news for Henro Fori because he's on his way out, not likely to lose another position after Leroy Donald looks to make his way up and ahead. So for Fori, the worst it can be for him at the moment can't be any much worse than what's going on for Vickery. Van Lolke gets up and ahead as well, but you can see just up the road, Henro Fori has managed to just sneak out up ahead, but here comes Tom Van Lolke. It's contact between the two Porsches down into Tamburello. If you're joining us now, you joined us right in the heat of a sudden spur of incidents. Up on the instant replays then, let's get a look at that. So this was on the exit of the pit lane for Henro Fori down in the AM category. Here comes Tom Van Lolke, slams into the side of Fori, tried for the inside down at Tamburello. It is an almost a textbook mistake here in the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Dino Ferrari. And I've noticed every time we've come out of the instant replay system, there's always had this little bit of desync, and I can never quite understand why it happens. Right now, we're watching with Alfredo Pereira Vigo. Jason Leatherby is right in sight at the moment. Half a second between the Ferrari and the Aston Martin. Now, this is for 6th on track and for the overall lead of AM. Now, bear in mind, neither of these two have taken what appears to be their pit stop. Not that we can verify this anymore. As we saw earlier on, coming into the pits was Henro Fori. And after that incident, it's going to be a much harder drive back to the lead of AM. This could be his AM win taken away from him, as he's still with Tom Van Lolke. This could get nuclear. We already saw a brief spat of bad blood down at Tamburello going to Ravazza, though. Did Fori just fake out Van Lolke for an inside move? No, because Tom Van Lolke, he's not a fool. He's picked up on that move, and he is not going to be fooling for any dumb tricks like that. And I think if you look close enough into the cockpit, you can see him wagging his finger backwards towards Henro Fori. I won't say which finger. Here's Jonathan Barrett, the number 3, up in 9th for the moment. And right now, about 12 seconds away from the AM podium. That being currently taken up in Division 3rd for Leroy Donald, then Pereira Vigo, then Leatherby. That's one of the nearest fights on track at the moment, besides the obvious of Van Lolke versus Fori. Battle from the same manufacturer, but on 2 different categories. Pro V AM there, the 79 versus the 32. We can see the 79 actually trying to unlap himself from, that's the number 21 there, the golden Porsche of Jonathan Curran, up in 3rd place. So for an hour-and-a-half race, I wasn't expecting the front and the rear of the field to be meeting each other so quickly. We're 40 minutes into this 90-minute race, and we have been left with plenty of questions and a relief, plenty of answers. So we're back on board with Alfredo Pereira Vigo. That number 99 has been on a serious mission here, a proper campaign, as it were, to get back up into the lead of category. He's so tantalizingly close to retaining the position he started today's race from, and it was ripped away from him in that utter maelstrom of events heading down through the Variante Tamburello on lap 1. We're still on board then, as we look to take up not only the fight for division, I think as it stands right now, the division lead on track, it's that fight for 6th. Down towards Variante Alta we go then. That Aston Martin, I must say, it has been a very understated performance by Jason Leatherby, but it's that consistency that's been netting him higher and higher positions in today's AM Championship race. He's allowed the chaos to sort of unfold around him from both his compatriots in AM and the Premier class up in Pro. And for his efforts and for his consistency, that Aston Martin retains 6th place right now in this race, a position vehemently fought for at the moment by Paria Vigo. We'll just quickly catch on board with these two at a moment's time. We take a look around the field to see what else is going on track. Well, to give an update on the fight between Fori and Van Lolke, that has quickly disappeared into the aether. Van Lolke up the field, actually in between the two Porsches right now, is the car in 4th place. That crimson red 24 of Donnie Linton. Talent from the United States up to 4th then in today's race. They have really been fighting vehemently for this one. They were involved in a fight that seemed to last an eternity between themselves and Simpson and Vickery. Vickery now a long way from his two sort of sparring partners, as it were, now inheriting the last of those top 5. Speaking of, here comes Jay Simpson into the pit lane. And to give an update as well, as we've just seen information come to light as well. Thank you for keeping us in the loop. We've been keeping a sort of second-hand glance of it. And that is the gap right now between Russell Nash and Thomas Neymeyer. Now, the last time we observed the gap and made an actual note of it was sitting up at around, I think it was about 7 seconds we were talking here. And now it has shed to beneath the 6-second margin. We could even be talking here if we try and get a fresh set of eyes on that data as we quickly just check in for the last time before a little run around the track here between Leatherby and Paria Vigo down towards Ravat. So that remains in order at the moment. And a drive-through penalty for Henro Fori as we try and take a look for the lead of this race. So here is the race leader. And yes, so despite the speculation, it is not just under that 6-second barrier. Rather frighteningly now, for Thomas Neymeyer, it is under 5 seconds. All of the time in the world here could not keep Russell Nash away from the potential race lead. You've really got to hand it to him from starting from the back of that field. It's a dangerous gambit to play with. Last time we saw him do this was, I believe, for season, I want to say season 7 of VSR Phoenix at the Nürburgring, when he decided to start from the back. And again, like how he's done today, he's made absolutely light work of it. See in the background there, coming out of the pit lane, was the, I believe, the number 85. So that was Simpson. Now down to 8th in this race, though, but bear in mind, plenty of pit stops still left to serve, especially from that top 2. So Russell Nash and Thomas Neymeyer could be getting into arms for a race lead fight in a moment's time, but will strategy creep up on either side? With 46 minutes left to go, only time will tell. Quickly checking back in then with the fight now promoted to the fight of the top 5 in today's race between Leatherby and Paria Vigo. This is also still the fight for the AM, well, not the AM Championship, sorry, the AM Division lead, on their way out of the Acqua Minerale. Now on the way to the Variante Alta. It has maintained a very close sub-second gap between the pair over the course of the last couple of laps here, and it could explode into side-by-side action at a moment's notice, but you've got to hand it off here to Jason Leatherby, as he has been incredibly consistent, ruthlessly so. Not ruthlessly slow, that's an insult. Anything but, as a matter of fact, for Leatherby. That Aston Martin, one of the best cars to have in a defending posture as well. Speaking from experience, it's such an easy car to have in the defending posture. And he's now forced Paria Vigo into the pit lane with him. A strategy where they're otherwise taking that chance off of the 99, knowing the damage on that Ferrari. We check here with Edward Vickery. Slowly reeling in a top 10 position on track. Bear in mind, he took his pit stop incredibly early by most comparisons here. The pit window is now open, according to race control, at the halfway mark. Into the pits then comes Thomas Neymeyer and Jonathan Curran. And now taking the lead of this race is Russell Nash. So he's got the opportunity now, with fresh air in front of him and the lead of the race, to open up the taps here to try and overcut Thomas Neymeyer. Now that is a tough call for a lot of drivers. I don't think it will be so tough for a drive like this. Neymeyer's in. Curran is going to be up to 2nd then. He makes his way out through the Variante Tamburello. Alongside him there was Tom van Lolke down in 7th. good to have insight from drivers as well. Skino in chat explaining to us that that Sector 1 is a cold tire killer. It's not hard to see where that comes from. You exit straight into the run to the Tamburello chicane. I mean, by most accounts, it's not graceful in Formula 1. It's even less graceful on this variation of the Pirelli P0. So for these drivers, it's definitely going to be one of the biggest challenges today, on top of the obvious, is just trying to coax even a smidgen of life into those Pirellis. Making his way out of the pits then. We'll see this in action for Thomas Niemeyer. Bear in mind, Ford working against a restrictor plate added to that Mustang today, as well as what would have been an otherwise beneficiary 10 kilo reduction. You could see already that in practice, so a great eye there by Skino to call that one out. The cold tire killer section as it is now, Sector 1. You can see the hesitation in Niemeyer. He wants to coax life out of those tires, but you can see the car almost groaning and struggling under the auspice of trying to find even an ounce of grip. Russell Nash is into the pit lane then from the race lead. And with just under 3/4 of an hour left to go, the race has been far from decided, but it has been an incredible opening stint by Nash. Can he pick that one up then for the next half of the race? Niemeyer is out on the track and cleared to charge. Curran looks to take the lead of this race then. Behind him, Donnie Linton. Niemeyer is down to the Acqua Minerale and up towards Variante Alta. It may be just too far away, perhaps, then, for him to try and catch up to Russell Nash. Was that opening sector perhaps a little too sketchy to extract 100% of the performance on that Mustang? Well, we see here from the 999's point of view, still in the pit lane, and now drops off the jacks, and he's on the charge out. So that overcut was very likely to happen today for Russell Nash on the pace he's been on, and it has been a flawless pit stop for the 99. He's on his way to the lines here. Josh Harris picks up a drive-through penalty, is the next driver to be smited by race control. It's a run all the way to the line, though, as you can see on the opening, straight out through turn 19, now to turn 1. Russell Nash gets clear of the pit lane, but you can see approaching round turn 1 on full steam ahead here is Thomas Niemeyer. As we know, Sector 1 is not graceful on those Pirellis. You can see it before in Niemeyer. You can see it in Nash. Niemeyer's got an extra lap there on those Pirellis, a bit more heat to play with. So on the exit of Tamburello, he is still in the fight. Down towards Villeneuve. It's 0.8 of a second between Nash and Niemeyer. This could get nuclear. Down towards turn 7 we go. Harris into the pits then. Simpson to 5th. Leroy Donald into the pit lane as well. We'll see where he stacks up against Leatherby and Paria Vigo in the fight for the AM lead. You can see just out through Piratella, now into Minerale. Whatever setup Nash has got on that McLaren, it is so aggressive because he's able to coax the life out of those tyres shockingly fast there. And that's not been helped for Thomas Niemeyer by that run out of Acqua Minerale. He's run very deep through turn 13. Now into Variante Alta. It's 1.5 seconds between the pair of them nearly on their way to Ravazza. Looking around the field, here's Jay Simpson, 15 seconds up the road from Tom van Locher, and nearly 40 seconds away from the fight we were just watching. Speaking of, they just dropped to within a second for just a moment there at the axis point of the Ravazza corner. Just between the pair of them there, turns 17 and 18. Now we have got lapped traffic up ahead, and as a matter of fact, it is for the fight of the AM lead. So it stands right now that there will be more cars up the road still yet to have taken their pit stops, if memory serves me correctly. But what we're seeing in front of Nash and Niemeyer at the moment is Leatherby versus Paria Vigo. Neither of these two want us to see position on track, knowing the implications of today's race. We see Henro Fori has taken quite a few runs to the pit lane, yet retains a position ahead of his contemporaries in AM. Could potentially elevate this back into his hands for a chance of an AM category win today. That is all still yet to be decided. 39 minutes to go. We see here with Alfredo Pereira Vigo. He's got Russell Nash right on his tailpipe down into the Aqua Minerale. He runs deep. Nash goes through. So Leatherby now under pressure here by Nash. Does he move over for the approaching McLaren? He's actually swerving to defend and try and cut some of the air off. He doesn't want to actually give Nash or Neymar, as it stands, the benefit of the doubt. So on the exit of the Variante Alta, very nearly comes into arms with the 999. Does the same get reciprocated for the 95? No, he doesn't do the same thing twice here. And with Curran and Linton into the pit lane in the moment, literally facing one another down from the front row, it's going to be Russell Nash and Thomas Neymar to return to the race lead. Neither of these two drop off the jack, so we're back on board with Russell Nash and Thomas Neymar on their way to the line. The new front row as it stands, as they cross the start-finish line. Nash back into the lead. Neymar closer than ever for the fight of first. This is the big one. This is what we've all been waiting for. And we've seen championship, well, not championship fights, sorry. We've seen race fights so far go absolutely white hot at the moment's notice. So will the same thing befall our pair here? We're on board with Neymar. He's definitely found a bit of a spring in his step there amongst the traffic, and the gap now closer than ever between himself and Russell Nash. Finally, could there be the chance for the 95 to come and fight back for the race lead? He's in the slipstream. You can't run from me anymore, says Neymar. We do have yellow flags up ahead. It's for the 401. Josh Harris in trouble out through turn 10 and on his way to Aqua Minerale. You can see him slowing down in front there. There is an advisory out for the drivers, but that has since cleared back into a green flag. Quickly picks back up into a yellow flag. You saw off there to the right-hand side. If we get a look at that on the replays. Now, I just want to get a look. We're still watching on the other monitor here what's going on between Neymar and Nash. Out through Alta, nothing at the moment. So look to your right-hand side there, spinning through turn 13. Or turn 12 to turn 13 was Josh Harris. Down towards Rabat, we go then. Neymar with a drive-through penalty, so that has all fallen apart, all but solidifying the rule as it stands of Russell Nash. Is there anything Neymar can do now to fight him back off? Not very likely as it stands with 37 just under left to go. Looking further behind them, there was that inkling of a fight still going on as it stands. As we look here from Russell Nash's point of view, we want to get on board here. We actually do see some side-by-side action between Barrett and Vickery on the exit of turn 7. Very nearly comes into contact with one another there. Very, very close between Jonathan Barrett and Edward Vickery. Edward Vickery as well doing God's work in the only Lamborghini in this race here. Well behind enemy lines of the Autodromo Internazionale. Enzo Edino Ferrari, I should say. Not Nazionale. That would be Monza we're speaking of. And the 401 in trouble again. So Josh Harris now down what I believe is the Variante, yes, the Tamburello chicane. Found himself into brief trouble once more. This is the fight we wanted to see here. This is Leatherby v Pereira Vigo. Leatherby still leads the charge. Now, not for the AM lead anymore. That goes to Henro Fori up the road. And we've still yet to see what Barrett's going to be doing for pit lane runs. This could be the opportunity he's been looking for, as he's lost quite a lot of steam since that overtake by Edward Vickery down at turn 7. Checking with Leatherby. These, bear in mind, are still pivotal podium positions. Looking up the road, Neymar on his way down towards Ravazza has now lost a lot of time to Russell Nash, still leading the charge now. Started from the back, could be taking it to the race win today in 35 minutes, but never hold your breath to these things. Into the pits then comes Jonathan Barrett in the number 3 from the lead of the AM category, soon to be dethroned, and there it is by Henro Fori. So Fori up to the lead. Leatherby and Pereira Vigo in pursuit then, up to 2nd and 3rd in category, and they're just scraping into the top 10 there in the case of Leatherby. So, as where it stands at the moment, Russell Nash leads in Imola. A drive-through penalty for Thomas Neymeyer after what has been a commanding lead so far. It has all come asunder for the number 95. Jonathan Curran looks to be moving up a position then. And same story for Donnie Linton, but we'll report on that when it happens. Right now, they're third and fourth, with Jay Simpson in fifth, Tom Van Locher in sixth, Edward Vickery seventh, and Robert Ogan in eighth. Then into the AMs, down in ninth for the moment. Henro Fori leads the charge for the AM category, with Jason Leatherby and Alfredo Perea Vigo in arms for the remaining podium positions. Jonathan Barrett still in the pit lanes at the moment, loses out fourth in class and 12th overall to Leroy Donald. Josh Harris having an absolute mare here in Imola. Not a clue what's going on. He's spun out now on the exit of Ravazza. That could very well be the requiem now for the 401 today. Was a serious hopeful in today's fight for the potential podium positions up in Pro. And it has all come apart here for the 401 through just a real calamity of events. And we have seen a stop-go 30-second penalty for for pit lane infractions for Jonathan Barrett. So his chances of a fight back here to a podium in AM has been very quickly silenced. And do we see, yes, finally, the drive-through penalty being served by Thomas Neymeyer. So getting back on board with Leatherby and Perea Vigo. This is the closest we've seen them on the exit of Ravazza on their way to turn 19. Leatherby still holding on to a coveted podium position. So too is Perea Vigo, but all of them gunning for a chance in the championship. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the results from last week, moreover, if we go and take a look at the results in the AM Championship, Perea Vigo looks to get up and ahead of Barrett and Johnson if he can get back onto the podium. Right now, he holds on to third, but wants higher positions ahead and wants to get up into that division second. So a lot riding on the line for Alfredo Perea Vigo. Jason Leatherby stands to reason to gain positions as well. And the same story for Henro Fori. It's been a real day then for the drivers at the back of round one standings in the AM category. 32 minutes left to go and a lot riding on the line here. We see Neymeyer rejoins the track, and right in front of him, Donnie Linton gets all out of shape at Tamburello. Then out through Tamburello, Neymeyer gets up and alongside Donnie Linton. Could this get rough? It looks to be the case. Down into turns 5 and 6 we go at the Variante Villeneuve. But Neymeyer holds his nerve there. He's back up onto the podium. Perhaps that is to give some example as to how far up the road Thomas Neymeyer and Russell Nash have been over the course of the last hour of racing here. The 401 is into the pit lane, and I believe that's the end of the line for Josh Harris. The number 3 at the moment is into the pit lane to serve that stop-go 30, and that's for Jonathan Barrett in the McLaren down in the AM category. So perhaps that gives an indication as to how far those two were up the road to where Neymeyer serves a drive-through penalty and is still on the podium. Moreover, with 2 seconds between himself and Jonathan Curran actually starting to close down a bit, dare I say, there could be the chance for him to return back to second. See here with Jonathan Curran's point of view, that striking number 21 Porsche. Currently up in second. Getting back on board with Perea Vigo and Leatherby. Now that gap having opened up quite a ways there was about 3 to 4 tenths of a second, has doubled now to about 8 to 9 tenths. A bit of a rough exit for Leatherby though out of Tosa. That could give rise to future opportunities here for Perea Vigo. He's starting to learn the pattern here of the Aston Martin. These two, I must say, have been two of the best balanced drivers on track. You're not seeing direct advantage for one over the other. I get the feeling here, and I'd like to suggest the theory that if the positions were reversed and it was Perea Vigo defending from Leatherby, we'd be in the same predicament. These two are two sides of the same coin. They're like peas in a pod here, inseparable. So having a look around the field, Russell Nash is your race leader after an hour here in Imola. Started in 18th, is now leading. After thick, thin, blood and peacetime, he now stands atop the charts as it stands. And threw away his chances of a Grand Slam. He had that pole position, but then was disqualified, giving pole position to Thomas Neymayer in the 95 Mustang. He also, but I think by the looks of it now, I want to check the timetables because I'm not 100% certain on this because we didn't get a conclusive answer. But no, so even if he had held on to it, he was 6/10 slower at the end of free practice on Neymayer. So Russell Nash really playing with his food here in round 2 of the championship. He's done all of that, I think, just for the hell of it. And fair play. If you got pace like that, by all accounts, play away, because that has been one of the greatest drives I think I've seen in a long time here. Definitely up there. We've seen Curran now lose out position to Neymayer. The last of the 2 Currans left in this, as Pascal Curran left earlier on from the AM category, also with Porsche. And we are seeing things hotting up here in the podium. So as we quickly check back in with our regular duo of Leatherby and Paria Vigo, still fighting for second in class. And right now for the last of the top 10, we catch on board with Neymayer, but I want to get on board here with Jonathan Curran. Was previously second, but a moment ago got took there. Oh, let's not speak too quickly. Let's not speak too quickly here. Was taken for second place by Thomas Neymayer. That big stab of oversteer, though, definitely putting a bit of a chill in his spine and dropping the gap to nearly half a second. There could yet be the fight back for the number 21 to return to second place. But I want to stay on board here just for the time being. Now, we will, of course, check back in with Paria Vigo and Leatherby. Let's not distance ourselves from what has been one of the closest fights consistently on track over the course of the last hour of racing. But the reason I stay on board with Curran is the fact that he's found himself dead center of what could yet be either a fight for the last of the podium positions between himself and Donnie Linton behind, or could be a fight back to second between himself and Thomas Neymayer ahead. Right now, as the gaps start to open up between himself and Linton, it looks more likely to be the latter. The fight back up to second is yet still lively for Jonathan Curran. Missed out on results in last round at Brands Hatch, was one of 9 DNFs alongside Pascal Curran, also with Porsche, but competing from the AM category. Both the Currans were out of round 1. Is this yet the opportunity for fight back out of Curran? With 27.5 minutes left to play for, it is looking to be a podium right now for the 21. Looking back around the field, where would we be without the scope of the fight here between Paria Vigo and Leatherby? What has been one of the closest fight on track for the longest period of time. Definitely one of the talking points to come out of round 2, as this does affect where things stand in the AM category, as we see Henro Fori, who is towards the back of the AM standings, up at the front of the AM category in this race. And we also see Leatherby and Paria Vigo. Paria Vigo, more poignantly, is in third in the AM championship after round 1, so still stands to reason to inherit the championship lead by round 3. Should he be able to get past Jason Leatherby in the Aston Martin? Briefly checking in there, as we saw close to one another, but on 2 separate lengths of the races, Van Lorca and was it Barrett in the number 3? .3 of a second, so not the greatest exit for Leatherby, but you can see that 4-litre in that Aston Martin. Now that's we've gone at length to describe the engines in these cars already, but I just want to point this out. That is a 4-litre M177 export model AMG V8 twin turbo there, and it is an absolute rocket here in Imola, especially up against Ferrari's newer V6. Now, the same underpinnings for that engine as the same V6 used in the 499P that has gone 3 years on the trot at wins at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So there is quite a bit of prestige under the bonnets of these two. We'll catch up with them later on, though. We take another look around the track here, as I believe this is the closest fight on track right now. We can see that Neymayer has cleared Curran. Linton still far away from the 21, so no imminent threat of a fight on the podium here. So we are looking back to the fight of the AM podium. Now from the point of view of Leatherby. They're fighting on track for the last of those top 10 positions. They make their way down to Aqua Minerale. We're still on board now from the point of view of the defending car, Jason Leatherby. closely paying attention to what's going on here with Leatherby and Puria Vigo, now half a second from one another on the exit of turn 19. On to lap 37 here. Actually, sorry, lap 36, as the timing line is much earlier on the track than previously anticipated. These two still in constant clash for that 10th place on track. And the ramifications of the position are much greater than what it appears, as it represents those podium positions, the remaining podium positions of the AM podium. Currently looking to get the AM win in today's race is Henro Fori in the number 32 up the field. But these two squabbling for the last of those podium positions, or the last two that remain, knowing that the ramifications for their championship positions in AM ride on the line of a solid result today. And what it has given us is this recipe for one of the closest fights on track of any two drivers over the course of this race, by distance and by time covered. Just touring each other around the track at this point. They are constantly in odds. You could make the argument that Leatherby could have just put a tow hitch on the back of that Aston Martin. The gap would have been all to the same as throwing each other around the Variante Alta. Both of them mimicking each other's lines, making each other's mistakes. They are working in unison in that fight for 10th. These are two drivers operating it so well in sync, you'd have thought they're on autopilot down into Ravazza. Now out through turn 18 and the end of Ravazza. It's a much better exit this time for Alfredo Puria Vigo. So for Jason Leatherby, if we look over his rear view, you can see the Ferrari in his slipstream, but it's just losing ground there. The AMG V8 under the bonnet of this Aston is giving him so much thunder down the opening straight towards the Variante Tamburello chicane. Down at turns 2, 3 and 4. There's a bit of a rough run through turns 2, then through turn 3, now to turn 4, locks everything back in, nice, neat and tidy. 0.4 of a second between himself and Alfredo Puria Vigo. Now 0.5 into the Variante Villeneuve. One of the main upsides of the Aston Martin as well, and drivers of it and ex-drivers of it in this game can explain the same point, is this thing is very confident on the curbs. When set up right, it is an absolute tank and can go over those curbs with reckless abandon. With so many curbs aloof here at the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari, you could definitely make the argument this is one of the best cars to have on paper. And for the AM Championship, it is looking still very lively for Jason Leatherby. Very nearly contact there between the pair of them. Good aversion by Puria Vigo, but he has not lost any ground in the grand scheme of things to catch up to Leatherby. If anything, he has gained a little bit of ground here because he's right up behind him, giving him the lights on his way to the Variante Alta. Not happy at all. Perhaps suspecting Leatherby broke early there. You know, Skino's in chat as well. We've seen him before with Aston Martin over the years, among several other manufacturers. So I don't know whether or not you'd agree. I think both of us have used the V8 Vantage at some point. I feel like we could both agree on that point, that it is one of the best cars over the curbs, at least when done incorrectly. I don't feel like you scrub too much performance by having the car a little bit softer. But then again, I've done far fewer races. I'm just not a big fan of the way this game feels for the GT3s. Loved it back in Assetto Corsa, but ACC just maybe wasn't my cup of tea. That's maybe because I was on a G920 and not a four-figure, perhaps even five-figure racing rig. Got the mileage out of it in rally, though. Out of Tamburello, then we go. 0.3 of a second, a little upset on the exit of turn 4 for Jason Leatherby. Now as he makes his way to the Variante Villeneuve, still right up his backside there on his way to turn 7, is Alfredo Puria Vigo. Well, really, we can't take our eyes off of it. It has totally encapsulated us over the course of this race, so much so that we've missed that Jay Simpson picked up a drive-through penalty. We've been so glued to this fight and its consequences therein that we failed to recognise that Simpson has been caught out by the stewards. A drive-through of which he is serving right now as Edward Vickery closes into sight. I don't think it's too much riding on the line here for Simpson. He's lost out, pardon me, he's lost out the top 5 to Tom van Locher, now on the exit of the Variante Villeneuve, but he exits the pit still in solid points position inside that top 6. Vickery just far enough away to not be a present factor worry. Back on board with Leatherby and Perea Vigo for just a moment as we take a look around the rest of the top 10 with 20 minutes left to go in today's race. Russell Nash leads the charge ahead of Thomas Neymeyer, Jonathan Curran in third and Donnie Linton in fourth. Actually not too far behind, so we may be looking on with these two in a moment's time on their fight for the last of the podium in Pro. Then behind Linton is Van Lorca, Simpson, Vickery and Ogan to round out the pros. Then down into 9th and beyond, Henro Fori on the AM lead in 9th position, Leatherby in 10th, Perea Vigo 11th, Donald 12th and Barrett 13th. The death toll up to 6 cars then. Actually, sorry, up to 5 cars. We started with 18 vehicles, 9 either side of it. So that would be 5 cars that we've lost out in today's race. Now, we're not meeting the same highs as we saw in Brands Hatch. That was a whopping 9 cars, according to SimGrid, that DNF'd in Brands Hatch's opening 45-minute round. But we're not far off of it. I will say that much. We are not far off of it. So on the imminent fears in the back of one's mind that we were going to be finding our way into serious calamity over the course of this race has been met head on with quite the serious opening lap incidents. But as we come into the closing 20 minutes of this race, it is still as lively as ever. So we are going to cut away for the first time in a long time between Leatherby and Perea Vigo. Hopefully this is not the time that they just suddenly decide to change place on track as we try and catch a scoop here on the situation between Donnie Linton and Jonathan Curran. Now you can see how close they are to one another at this time. Not close enough to be striking distance, no. But we are more talking a long-winded battle that could go all the way to the line there. The number 86 is in trouble. And that was Leatherby. So Leatherby in serious trouble. I believe there could have been problems between himself and the lapping car of Thomas Neymeyer. So that is really cruel commentator's curse. As a matter of fact, the one time we look away from this fight, something finally does happen. Much in the defiance of the rule of nothing ever happens in some of these races. 17.5 minutes left to go. Jason Leatherby down to 12. Now behind Leroy Donald. And loses out right as it stands for this time, unless he can recuperate it in 17.5 minutes, the AM podium. Now, the last on the AM podium positions for Division 3rd is Leroy Donald in the number 14 Ferrari. Now, Leatherby is going to be seeing red for the next 17 minutes after whatever on earth happened, if I can get my words out. But I'm still left to wonder, was the proximity of Neymeyer a pressing factor in this fight? Bear in mind, the last time we took away from Perea Vigo and Leatherby was when this 95 was right up their back end, about to lap them from second place. There would definitely be that steward's inquiry. And as I've said on several different championships across Lord knows how long we've been doing this, I am glad I'm not one of the stewards. Because I think this is the tip of the iceberg, as it were. And how big is this iceberg precisely? Well, I don't know if you... Pretty big. Let's not even get into the analogies of it. Big. At a loss for words, really. That was feral. Brutal, you can make the argument. With 5 cars out of this race, I'm surprised Leatherby got back onto the track. He's adamant to secure points in the AM Championship, but is in 4th now in that overall. In the AM division, and is 12th overall. Who is 4th overall is Donnie Linton, who, with currently Leroy Donald in the midst of it, is slowly being raveled into the fight between himself and Jonathan Curran. Up in 3rd place, he gets up past Donald, down into Ravazza he goes, and he has actually drawn in a little bit of time here. We cut away from Leatherby to catch on board with Jonathan Curran. Now, how much time did he catch there? About 0.4 of a second we were looking at there between Linton and Curran, having been drawn in with a little bit of free slipstream courtesy of Leroy Donald. Now on the 3rd step of the AM podium. Now onto the topic of the Pro podium, as we have still yet to see a conclusive answer to who ends up on the last of the podium steps up in the Pro category. And that could be still between Curran and Linton to decide. 15 minutes left to go here, functionally staring down at about 13 to maybe 12 laps of racing, but oh, it's all gone nuclear, and big contact between Curran and Linton. Out through the Variante Villeneuve, we saw that play out in slow motion, and maybe to accentuate the metaphor, it is literally in slow motion. As we saw, it was a bit of a step, then to a bounce at the start of Variante Villeneuve. Now we'll wait for the replay on that again. So heading down, one bump there, just a little bit of upset, then a bit of grass, locks up on the front right, then a jump, then onto the gravel, then into his face. That is... Oh, that is that is mighty unfortunate. But doesn't appear to be too severe in terms of damage. Jonathan Curran still on track. Doesn't require to be towed to the pit lane. He's still in action here. The 21 now with 6 seconds to make up on Donnie Linton's BMW. The fight still very much so on here with 14 minutes to go for third in Pro. A lot still left to be decided and a lot still up in the air. What is conclusive right now as Russell Nash continues to open the taps here on his lead over the number 95. He's actually halfway around the track to Thomas Neymeyer. So unless something seriously bad happens now for the 999, he is going to take home a second in a row race win at a much more compelling odds than round ones where he started with the fastest lap in that there. Well, not started with the fastest lap. He concluded that race with the fastest lap, and I'm pretty sure started from first. If he's done the same thing, now bear in mind, we've not been included on what happened in round one. We've only got the results and the data from that race. We didn't take much of a look into qualifying data. We could do that right now, though, because I am genuinely curious to see if this is going to be a little challenge of Nash's to start from the back. No, okay, he started from pole. That's not a shock. That is really not much a shock to me. So again, as mentioned, much more compelling odds than what we saw in round one. We can see what is a very close fight here. This is for 6th, Simpson v Vickery. So let's get on board with these two. We catch on board. Who will we see the perspective of first here as we take a look? It's going to be for Edward Vickery in the Lamborghini up in Pro. Number 73 then in the charge for the fight of 6th place up against Jay Simpson in the 85. Robert Ogan 24 seconds down the field from them won't yet be a factor unless these two come into arms and get into a serious fender bender that we saw previously there between Curran and Linton at this section of the track out on the exit of the Variante Villeneuve. Now through Tosa, Vickery in pursuit. Down into Aqua Minerale, much later on the brakes. My word, the aversion there by Vickery. Vickery very nearly torpedoes his way into the back of Jay Simpson's Ford Mustang. That could have gone horribly wrong. He's come speeding in there. That was some serious guts to manage to pull himself out of that with no damage. And barely having lost any time, by the way. He's now within half a second of Jay Simpson in the 85 in front of him. So we get back on board now on the exit of Rabat. So we can barely see a thing here out of the windscreen of the 73. Now on his way to turn 19. Let's see if we can get a driver's helmet cam here. It's a very rarely used camera, but it gives us a very good insight as to what the drivers are going through on their way down towards turns 2, 3, and 4 here at Tamburello. It gives us a little bit of an insight on the G's on the brakes there, down into turn 3 next, now turn 4. Now down to Villeneuve, yellow flag out in front. That's for Barrett, now facing the wrong way. Jonathan Barrett down to 13th, but a drive-through penalty for Edward Vickery. So the battle for 6 is dead in the water. Vickery now the victim of race control, and I believe that's the second time today for the 73 Lamborghini. That's gone horrifically wrong. Cut away from them as we catch on with the next fight on track. Let's see where it could be coming from. You see the other side of this fight from Jay Simpson's point of view. Now on the exit of the Aqua Minerale. This has actually come at such a horrible time for Edward Vickery because he's now as close as he's ever been here to the fight to Jay Simpson for 6th place on track, but he knows it's all for naught. Even if he can get up and ahead of Simpson, what good will it do when the pit lane awaits him? Just under 10 minutes left to go. That is heartbreaking for the 73. Jonathan Curran is down in 4th place. Donnie Linton still in 3rd. After that clash down at turn 6 on the exit of the Variante Villeneuve, he is yet to fully recover from that. He's trying to reel him in, but that gap has since opened up to 3.5 seconds. So the chances for him to come back from that are remaining slim and are narrowing with every lap passing. 9 minutes left to go. We're on board with Tom van Lorca. And you can see he's definitely had a bit more of a spring in his step. He's been in quite a few different incidents, especially at the start there. But the 79 is up to the top 5, so solid points on the way for the Belgian as he makes his way down towards the Aqua Minerale. There on the exit of turn 13, up ahead of him there is a scorned 86 Aston Martin of Jason Leatherby. But Donnie Linton, he won't be arguing with an appearance on the podium. It would be his first this season, after Lee Evans and Ian Oates backed up the field in Brands Hatch, with Russell Nash taking home a win there as well. 8.5 minutes, just dropping under, left to go. For Leroy Donald, it has been a sudden change of events there, as he's now up to 3rd there, as we see Vickery after that a bit of trouble earlier on, and that drive-through penalty is now out behind Henro Fori. So as it stands for the AM drivers, it is still all to the same. Henro Fori will actually finish further up the field, so in the overall championships it's looking grand for the 32. In the AM championships it's looking even better. Now, just to draw that back up, as well as just quickly talk about the pros. Now, this is the AM standings. As we saw, Connor Johnson took the win in round 1. He leads, but with Barrett, Perea Vigo, Donald and Leatherby still in play, as well as Fori for that matter, there is a huge shift coming up in that top 5 then. And looking into the pro standings from where it is at the moment, Russell Nash is only going to continue to open that gap up, but we can definitely see progression on the charts for Robert Ogan as one of the only other drivers left in that top 6. And we will see appearances then from quite a few more by the end of today's race. Among them then is going to be Nehemiah, Linton, Curran, Van Lorca, I should say, Simpson and Vickery. On the grounds, all of them can get to the line. They'll all find their way onto the championship charts here. And it has not been an easy ride. Let's not joke at the obvious here. 5 cars out of this race. Now, we're nowhere near the 9 of round 1, but this is still quite a daunting set of data, really, to work with. To have a look at all of that, it is quite grim. Never seen a toll like that before. We've seen maybe a handful of DNFs, maybe at the height of it, maybe 3 or 4 over on, say, the Sunday League on NLRL, which is a series we cover week in, week out. Next round coming up this Sunday, 6:30 BST. And over the 3 seasons we've covered that, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. Maybe Indianapolis, season 1, round 5, you can make the argument for that it was quite a shocker start, but I don't think we had DNFs on the account of 9 per race. That was really quite something brutal. I imagine, well, I can at least think to imagine what on earth had to have happened last Friday at Brands Hatch to see 9 cars out of that race. It's been a real pleasure, though, stepping up for this, what was initially pitched to me as an emergency shift, as the previous comms team couldn't make it to round 2 of the championship, so we've been given the contract for season 2, round 2, over by the folks at MSC, and it really has been quite a pleasure to come along and cover this grid of drivers. Now, a few of these faces we're still familiar with. So, for example, Russell Nash, we've best known him as Just Boris over the 3 seasons we've spent covering him in the VSR Phoenix Championships. And also we saw him very, very briefly over on the TRR Sprint Series back in Season 3. We've also got drivers like Robert Ogan as well, who we've seen as VSR Twiglet in those same 3 seasons of VSR that we've been covering. So there are names on this that we recognise. Jonathan Curran being one of the more recent ones, as he stepped up into Season 9 in the Porsche Cup era. You can see his affinity for Porsche on very prominent display as he's driving around in what is quite literally a gold-clad 992 GT3R. Now imagine the more we look down this list, we probably will recognise plenty more of these drivers just by their aliases, less so than their actual names. But it is quite liberating to see for the first time quite a few of the drivers we've come to know from alias alone finally race under official naming convention. Just under 5 minutes left to go, approaching on that 4.5 minute mark. This is where it stands here in the next couple of laps. Should anything change, this is where it's going to happen. 4.5 minutes to go. Russell Nash leads here in Imola after a country mile send from the back of the field to take the helm of this race, and with the fastest lap so far, is on for an absolute knockout finish. Thomas Neymeyer had a very promising start to the race, but right now resides in second. Will still be a very solid finish, especially for its first points appearance on the chart there. Nothing to scoff at, with second place. Was actually gearing up to start from there before the disqualification of Russell Nash in quali today. We just saw trouble down the line there for Edward Vickery at the Variante Alta. We'll touch on that in a moment's time. Donnie Linton in third place, with Jonathan Curran in pursuit in fourth. You can see between them at the moment is Leroy Donald down in 11th place. Tom Van Loker in 5th and Jay Simpson in 6th. Robert Ogan in 7th. Henro Fori in 8th. Edward Vickery, we just saw there having some trouble at Variante Alta, is in 9th. Alfredo Perea Vigo in 10th. Leroy Donald in 11th. Jason Leatherby 12th. And Jonathan Barrett in 13th. With 5 DNFs today. These are the survivors of round 2. And the first of the endurance rounds of the championship, no less. Double the length of what it was at Brands Hatch. A 45-minute race for round 1 now meets a 90-minute race here in Imola. We're getting on to what I would say is the final 2 laps of racing we're scheduled to see in this race, with 3 minutes against the clock here. The laps cooking out in and around, looking on the timetables here for the last couple of laps in today's race, namely out of the current leader. Let's get a look at that fastest lap as well. I'm just curious to know what was that fastest lap. I think it's there, the 1:42.282 by Russell Nash. So yes, we are definitely in the bookings here for about 2 more laps here in Imola. This being one of them. So the closest fight at the moment, furthest up the order, is Curran v Linton, 2.2 seconds, 21 and 24. Porsche and BMW in arms there for the last of the podium positions, but it's a big snap of oversteer and a great save by Jonathan Curran. He's done very, very well there to hold that off. He's had a few issues for stability. We saw that down in the Variante Villeneuve. Just got a little bit too much gravel, then a little too much curb. It was just a domino effect that put him accidentally into the sights of Donnie Linton. You can see the damage on that 24 ahead, that dark crimson red BMW with quite the dent in its nose as we enter the final laps of today's race. A drive-through penalty, though, for Curran. That has come at the worst time here. It's serve or don't. It's serve or death, basically, because that, I'm pretty sure, is either a 180-second penalty, which will absolutely nuke his results, or it's a DSQ. I'm not entirely sure on the difference, but there, actually staying out. So he's made his bed. He may as well lie in it, says Curran. Allegedly. Didn't actually say that. Well, that's great news if you're in the number 79, Tom Van Loker, grinning ear to ear then to see that the drive-through penalty hit the car in front of him and not him himself as we enter the final minutes of the race. Henro Fori then looks to potentially, by the way it stands at this time, take home a maiden AM win. He'll be finishing 8th overall, the leader on the final lap, so we'll stay with Russell Nash in a moment's time there as the drive-through penalty persists for Jonathan Curran. For Donnie Linton, that is a sigh of relief, really, for the 24. A breath of fresh air, knowing now that podium cannot be fought for so long as he keeps himself in the clear and narrow. He's done everything that he could to stave off any chances from anyone else on the field to come and have a go. That podium is pretty much his to secure now. Leroy Donald looking to challenge Alfredo Perea Vigo. This is for second in division, so this is going to come all the way to the line as it stands. And they, right now, because they're further up the road from the 999, will be going all the way into another lap, having to cut across. No, actually sweeps it back in, so good on him for keeping inside the track limits. Leroy Donald definitely tried for an ambitious move and just couldn't see it through. Alfredo Perea Vigo takes up the helm, then retaining second in class, so there is definitely that chance for a fight today. We'll have to catch up with them a little later on. We still watch them, though, for as long as we can here as we prepare the arrival of Russell Nash on what is going to be an incredible last to first victory. There goes Jonathan Curran into the pit lane. Making his way down towards Ravazza. We're still on board with that fight for Division 2nd between Perea Vigo and Leroy Donald. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time as we get now on board with Russell Nash. And what a drive it has been today here in round 2 of the championship as he makes his way down towards the checkered flag here in round 2. Started 18th on the grid, up 17 positions. It has been all or naught for Russell Nash. He wins in pro and he wins overall by a country mile in the 999. A brilliant performance by the 999 today. Very, very well done. Neymeyer is a long way from home here and is a long way from taking home second place, I should say. Donnie Linton not too far away from him either. Looking to the line, Simpson in 6th, Leatherby in 12th. Let's actually get a look on board here. The chapter of Perea Vigo versus Donald for 2nd in AM. Right now doesn't appear to be too much in contention, so we'll catch on board with Henro Forey. So we've seen the pro winner, that was Russell Nash, now on his way to the line for a maiden win then. Henro Forey in the 32 takes home the AM win here in Imola. Brilliant stuff today. He's fought through thick and thin for that one. We fought it down and out for the start. Never count him out of that one. An AM win for Henro Forey. So Neymeyer 2nd, Linton 3rd by the looks of it, Van Lorca up to 4th, Curran to 5th after that drive-through penalty, Simpson 6th, Ogan 7th, Vickery to the line then in 9th. Let's see where things fall into play. It's a half spin into him, full contact with the wall there for Leroy Donald. Can he get it to the line for 3rd in AM? So it does appear. Perea Vigo, we saw a disconnect in front, but he'll be finishing in, I believe, 10th in this race. He's done a mighty job there. 2nd in class, very solid points then. Could be then into the lead of the AM Championship. Leroy Donald, 3rd in class, will finish in 11th. Just ignore the results then until we get the full breakdown of things in a moment's time. Your 2 winners, though, Russell Nash in Pro and Henro Forey in AM. Brilliant stuff then from the pair. We'll wait for that full disclosure. We just wait here for the arrival of Jonathan Curran. There's your results. Russell Nash wins in Pro. Henro Forey wins in AM. Thomas Neymeyer and Donnie Linton on 2nd and 3rd in Pro. In 2nd and 3rd in AM is Alfredo Perea Vigo and Leroy Donald. Then, recounting the full results, Russell Nash 1st, Thomas Neymeyer 2nd, Donnie Linton 3rd, Tom Van Lorca 4th, Jonathan Curran rounds out the top 5, Jay Simpson 6th, Robert Ogan 7th, Henro Forey in 8th, Edward Vickery 9th, Alfredo Perea Vigo in 10th, Leroy Donald in 11th, Jason Leatherby 12th, Jonathan Barrett in 13th. Then, the death toll for our DNFs here, Harris, Horton, Curran, that's Pascal Curran for your information there, Guasco Baraldo, Pocorni and Miller. That was quite something to take home there. Technically, Miller was a DNS as he didn't start that race, but does still appear on the charts there. So technically 5 DNFs, 1 DNS, but either or really. You know, it's apples and oranges at this point. What a race that has been, though, and a real pleasure from us here on TRTN to be able to cover this round of the championship. Thank you so much for the MSC team to contact us and get us involved here in Season 2. It's been a brilliant pleasure from us here in the commentary box to bring to you round 2 of the championship. And thank you very much for the viewers at home for tuning in for this round as well. It's been very nice to come live to a new audience of viewers from the MSC community, and it has been a fantastic race. A very solid race indeed. I am incredibly surprised from what I saw today. I mean, there's been a lot of action, a lot of chicanery, a lot of violence for a GT3 race, but you don't see me complaining. And what a win then it's been for Russell Nash. Started at the back in 18th position, fought 17 positions to the lead and won by nearly a minute to the nearest car on track. And what a story for Henro Forey to take home his first AM win in Season 2. That has been brilliant stuff for the 32, and that's Porsche's first win as well in AM. Brilliant stuff. Well done to all of our podium sitters across Pro and AM. Well done to the podium sitters overall as well. Russell Nash, Thomas Neymeyer and Donnie Linton. Very well done to everyone who made it to the checkered flag, and thank you all for turning out to this race, as that has been a real treat here on TRTN. I am pleasantly surprised with what I'm seeing, and we may be back to you in the future. Who knows? That's all from us here on TRTN. What a surprise it has been today. And that's all from us here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.